Your brain is an incredible machine, but it didn't come with an instruction manual. While most people stumble through life using only a fraction of their mental capabilities, a small group of researchers, memory champions, and peak performers have discovered specific techniques that dramatically enhance cognitive function. These aren't feel-good theories or motivational fluff. These are evidence-based strategies backed by decades of psychological research and neuroscience studies. From ancient memory techniques used by Greek orators to cutting-edge discoveries about attention and decision-making, these 100 mind hacks represent the best of what we know about optimizing human cognitive performance. Hack 1. The Memory Palace Technique, also known as the method of loci, is perhaps the most powerful memory tool ever discovered. Ancient Greek orators used this method to remember hours-long speeches without notes. And modern neuroscience has confirmed exactly why it works so extraordinarily well. The technique leverages your brain's exceptional ability to remember spatial information and visual details. To use this method, choose a familiar location like your home, workplace, or a route you walk regularly. Then mentally place the items you want to remember in specific locations along a predetermined path through that space. The key is to be consistent with your route and to make the mental images as vivid and unusual as possible. When you need to recall the information, simply take a mental walk through your palace, visiting each location in order. Studies have shown this technique can improve memory recall by up to 62% compared to rote memorization. Memory champions regularly use variations of this technique to memorize entire decks of cards or thousands of digits. The reason it works is that it transforms abstract information into concrete, spatial, visual memories that our brains evolved to handle efficiently. Your brain dedicates substantial neural real estate to spatial memory, because knowing where things are located was crucial for survival throughout human evolution. Hack 2. The 20-20-20 rule for information retention. Every 20 minutes of studying or intensive mental work, look at something 20 feet away for at least 20 seconds. While this rule was originally developed to prevent eye strain from computer work, research has revealed it provides significant cognitive benefits that extend far beyond eye health. This brief break serves multiple important functions for your brain. First, it allows your mind to consolidate the information you've just absorbed, moving it from working memory into more permanent storage. Second, it prevents cognitive fatigue, which accumulates during sustained mental effort and reduces both learning efficiency and retention quality. Third, the visual break helps reset your attention systems, preparing them for the next learning session. Research in cognitive psychology demonstrates that these microbreaks can improve information retention by up to 15% compared to continuous study sessions. The break doesn't need to be passive. You can use this time for light physical movement, which further enhances the cognitive benefits. The key is making sure the break activity is genuinely different from your main mental work. If you're reading, don't check your phone during the break, as this doesn't provide the cognitive rest your brain needs. Instead, look out a window, do some gentle stretches, or simply let your mind wander for those crucial 20 seconds. Hack 3. The testing effect. Instead of passively rereading your notes or textbooks, actively test yourself on the material you're trying to learn. This approach, known as the testing effect or retrieval practice, is one of the most powerful learning strategies discovered by educational psychology. The counterintuitive finding is that even if you get answers wrong during self-testing, the act of attempting to retrieve information from memory strengthens neural pathways and improves long-term retention. Research consistently shows that students who test themselves remember approximately 50% more information a week later compared to those who spend the same amount of time simply reviewing the material. The effort required to pull information from memory, even unsuccessfully, creates stronger and more durable memory traces. This is why flashcards, practice problems, and self-quizzing are so effective. The key is to test yourself before you feel completely ready. Don't wait until you've memorized everything perfectly. Start testing early in the learning process. Use a variety of question types: multiple choice, fill in a blank, short answer, and open-ended questions. The more varied your testing practice, the more flexible and robust your memory becomes. You can create your own tests, use online quiz tools, or simply close your notes and try to write down everything you can remember about a topic. Hack 4. The spacing effect. Don't cram all your learning into one intensive session. Instead, space out your learning over multiple sessions separated by increasing intervals. This principle, first discovered by Hermann Ebbinghaus in the 1880s and refined by decades of subsequent research, it's called the spacing effect or distributed practice. The optimal spacing schedule follows a pattern. Review new information after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, then a month, then 3 months. This spaced repetition pattern fights against your brain's natural forgetting curve, which shows that we lose approximately 50% of new information within the first hour, unless we review it. The spacing effect works because each time you retrieve information from memory, you're essentially relearning it in a slightly different context. This creates multiple retrieval pathways and makes the memory more robust. It's similar to creating multiple routes to the same destination. If one path is blocked, you have alternatives. Cramming might feel more efficient in the short term because you can perform well on immediate tests, but spaced learning creates knowledge that lasts for months or years rather than days. Many successful students and professionals use spaced repetition software like Anki or create manual review schedules to implement this principle systematically. Hack 5. The generation effect. When you generate an answer yourself rather than simply reading it, you remember it significantly better. This principle, known as the generation effect, demonstrates that the mental effort required to produce information creates stronger memory traces than passive consumption. Instead of reading "Paris is the capital of France" and moving on, pause and ask yourself, what's the capital of France? Then generate the answer from memory. Even this simple shift from passive reading to active generation can double your retention rate for that information. The effect works because generation requires deeper processing. Your brain must search through existing knowledge, make connections, and construct a response. You can apply this principle in numerous ways. When reading textbooks, turn headings into questions before reading the sections. When studying vocabulary, look at the foreign word first and try to remember the English meaning before checking the answer. When learning procedures, try to write out the steps from memory before consulting your notes. The generation effect is particularly powerful when combined with the testing effect. Create practice problems where you must generate solutions rather than just recognizing correct answers from multiple choices. This combination of generation and testing creates some of the strongest learning conditions possible, leading to retention rates that can exceed 80% even weeks after initial learning. Hack 6. Dual coding theory. Combine visual and verbal information whenever possible to maximize memory retention. Alan Pavio's dual coding theory demonstrates that information processed through both visual and verbal channels is remembered significantly better than information processed through just one channel. This happens because your brain has separate but interconnected systems for processing images and words. When learning new concepts, always try to create mental images to accompany verbal descriptions. If you're studying the circulatory system, don't just read about blood flow. Visualize the heart pumping. Imagine blood cells traveling through vessels and create mental movies of the process. The more vivid and detailed your mental imagery, the stronger the memory will be. This principle extends beyond academic learning. When someone gives you directions, visualize the route while listening to their words. When learning someone's name, create a mental image that connects their name to their appearance or to something memorable about them. The key is making the visual component as specific and personally meaningful as possible. Research shows that people who naturally think in both visual and verbal terms have superior memory performance across many different tasks. Even if you don't consider yourself a visual person, you can develop this skill through practice. Start by spending a few extra seconds creating mental images for important information you encounter throughout your day. Hack 7. The elaborative interrogation method. Transform passive learning into active understanding by asking yourself why questions about everything you're trying to learn. Why does this fact make sense? Why might this be true? Why is this information important? This technique forces you to create meaningful connections between new information and your existing knowledge base, making the new information much more memorable and useful. Elaborative interrogation works because it engages what psychologists call elaborative processing. You're not just memorizing isolated facts, but weaving new information into your existing web of knowledge. When information is connected to multiple other pieces of knowledge, it becomes much easier to remember and retrieve. For example, instead of just memorizing that plants perform photosynthesis, ask yourself why plants would need this process, how it connects to what you know about energy and biology, and why this process is important for life on Earth. These why questions help you understand the underlying logic and significance of information. The technique is particularly powerful for complex subjects, where understanding relationships between concepts is crucial. In history, ask why certain events happened when they did. In science, ask why natural phenomena work the way they do. In business, ask why certain strategies succeed or fail. This approach transforms you from a passive recipient of information into an active investigator, dramatically improving both understanding and retention. Hack 8. The method of Losai enhancement. Take the traditional memory palace technique to the next level by adding emotional content, bizarre imagery, and multisensory experiences. Your brain is evolutionarily wired to remember unusual, emotional, or shocking information much better than mundane facts. This enhancement can increase the already impressive effectiveness of memory palaces by an additional 30 to 40%. When placing items in your memory palace, make them as weird, funny, dramatic, or emotionally charged as possible. Instead of simply placing a boring apple in your kitchen, imagine a giant apple wearing a top hat, doing a dance while singing opera. The more ridiculous and memorable you make these images, the easier they'll be to recall later. Add multiple senses to your memory palace. Don't just visualize. Imagine sounds, smells, textures, and even tastes associated with the information you're storing. If you're memorizing a speech about ocean conservation, don't just see yourself talking about plastic pollution in your living room. Smell the salt air. Hear the waves crashing. Feel the sand between your toes. Create emotional connections by linking information to personal experiences or strong feelings. If you're trying to remember that the Battle of Hastings was in 1066, you might imagine yourself as a Norman soldier feeling terrified but determined as you charge into battle. The emotional component activates your amygdala, which enhances memory consolidation and makes information more retrievable under stress. Hack 9. The serial position effect optimization. You naturally remember the first items in a list primacy effect and the last items recency effect, better than those in the middle. This psychological principle, discovered through extensive memory research, can be strategically leveraged to improve your learning and presentation effectiveness. Use this knowledge to structure your study sessions optimally. Place the most important or difficult information at the beginning and end of study periods, and use specific memory techniques for information that must be placed in the middle. When creating presentations or writing important emails, put your key messages at the start and finish, not buried in the middle where they're most likely to be forgotten. You can also create artificial primacy and recency effects by breaking long lists into smaller chunks. Instead of trying to memorize one list of 20 items, create 4 lists of 5 items each. This gives you 4 primacy effects and 4 recency effects instead of just one of each. For studying, this means reviewing the most crucial concepts at the beginning of each session, when your mind is fresh, and again at the end, when recency effects are strongest. If you're preparing for a presentation, practice your opening and closing most intensively, as these are the parts your audience is most likely to remember. Understanding and working with your brain's natural tendencies rather than against them can significantly improve your memory performance with minimal additional effort. Hack 10. The key word method for language learning. When learning foreign vocabulary, create mental images that link the foreign word's sound to its meaning through visual association. This technique, extensively researched in language learning psychology, can improve vocabulary retention by up to 300% compared to simple repetition methods. To use the keyword method effectively, identify a part of the foreign word that sounds like an English word, the key word. Then create a vivid mental image that connects the keyword to the meaning. For example, to remember that biblioteca means library in Spanish, you might imagine a bee carrying books to a tea party at the library. The phonetic similarity between biblioti and biblioteca creates the sound link, while the image of bees with books at a tea party in a library creates the meaning connection. The more unusual, humorous, or personally meaningful you make these images, the more effective they become. Don't worry about creating correct associations. Focus on what works for your particular brain and sense of humor. Some people prefer action-packed scenes, others like peaceful or beautiful images, and some respond best to absurd or funny scenarios. This technique works because it engages multiple cognitive systems simultaneously: phonetic processing, visual imagery, semantic meaning, and emotional response. It also transforms rote memorization into creative, engaging mental activity, which makes the learning process more enjoyable and sustainable over time. Hack 11. The preview question, read, summarize method. This 4-step active reading protocol can improve comprehension by up to 40% compared to passive reading. Before diving into any material, spend 2 to 3 minutes previewing the structure, headings, and layout to get an overview of what you're about to read. This preview creates a mental framework that helps you organize new information as you encounter it. Next, generate specific questions about what you expect to learn from the material. What problems does this text likely address? What information are you hoping to find? What questions do you have about this topic? These questions create a purpose for your reading and activate relevant prior knowledge. During the reading phase, read actively with your questions in mind. Look for answers to your questions, but also remain open to unexpected information. Take brief notes or highlight key points, but don't let note-taking become so intensive that it interferes with comprehension. Finally, summarize what you've learned in your own words without looking back at the text. This summary step forces you to organize and consolidate the information, revealing gaps in your understanding and strengthening memory traces. If you can't summarize something clearly, you'll probably need to reread that section more carefully. This method works because it engages your brain as an active participant rather than a passive recipient. Each step serves a specific cognitive function that enhances understanding and retention. Hack 12. The Feynman Technique, named after Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. This technique involves explaining complex concepts in simple terms as if teaching them to someone with no background knowledge in the subject. If you can't explain something simply and clearly, you don't truly understand it yet. The process has 4 steps. First, choose a concept you want to understand better and write it at the top of a blank page. Second, explain the concept in simple language as if teaching it to a curious child. Use analogies, examples, and avoid jargon. Third, identify gaps in your explanation. Places where you got stuck, used complex terms, or felt uncertain. Fourth, go back to your source material and study the areas where your explanation was weak. This technique is incredibly effective because it forces you to reorganize information in your own mental framework rather than just memorizing someone else's explanation. Teaching requires you to understand not just what something is, but why it works, how it connects to other concepts, and what makes it important. The Feynman technique also reveals the difference between recognition and recall. You might recognize a concept when reading about it, but struggle to explain it from memory. This struggle is valuable. It shows you exactly where your understanding needs strengthening. Many professionals use this technique to prepare for presentations, interviews, or any situation where they need to demonstrate deep understanding rather than superficial knowledge. Hack 13. The SQ3R method. Survey, question, read, recite, review. This systematic approach to reading textbooks and complex material has been proven effective through decades of educational research. Each step serves a specific cognitive function that enhances comprehension and retention. Survey involves quickly skimming through the material to get an overview of the structure, main topics, and key points. Look at headings, subheadings, charts, graphs, and summary sections. This creates a mental scaffolding that helps organize new information as you encounter it. Question means generating specific questions about the material before reading it in detail. What problems does this chapter address? What am I supposed to learn from this section? What questions do I have about this topic? These questions create active engagement and purpose for your reading. Read actively with your questions in mind, looking for answers and taking notes on key points. Don't just let your eyes move across the words. Engage mentally with the content and think about how new information connects to what you already know. Recite involves stating the main points in your own words without looking at the text. This step forces retrieval from memory and reveals gaps in understanding. Review means going back over the material periodically to strengthen memory traces and maintain long-term retention. Students using SQ3R consistently outperform those using casual reading strategies by 20 to 30% on comprehension tests. Hack 14. Active reading with the Cornell note-taking system. Developed at Cornell University, this note-taking system transforms passive reading into active engagement with material. Divide your notes into 3 distinct sections. A narrow left column about 2.5 inches, 4 cues and questions. A wider right column about 6 inches, for main notes and details. And a summary section at the bottom about 2 inches, for key takeaways. During initial reading or lectures, take your main notes in the right column using whatever format feels natural. Bullet points, short paragraphs, diagrams, or a combination. Don't worry about perfect organization at this stage. Focus on capturing important information quickly. After your initial note-taking session, use the left column to create cues, keywords, and questions that relate to your main notes. These cues serve as memory triggers that help you recall the detailed information in the right column. For example, if your right column contains detailed notes about photosynthesis, your left column might have cues like sunlight conversion, oxygen production, and plant energy. The summary section at the bottom forces you to distill the most important points into a few sentences. This summarization process requires you to identify key concepts and understand how they relate to each other. This system creates a built-in review structure. You can cover the right column and use the left column cues to test your recall. Or cover everything except the summary to see if you can regenerate the main points. Hack 15. The interleaving effect. Instead of studying one topic intensively before moving to the next, called blocked practice, mix different types of problems or subjects within a single study session. This technique, called interleaving, initially feels more difficult and less efficient. But research consistently shows it produces superior long-term learning and improved problem-solving skills. Interleaving works because it forces your brain to constantly discriminate between different concepts and solution strategies. When you practice multiple types of math problems in random order, for example, you must first identify what type of problem you're facing before solving it. This discrimination practice strengthens your ability to recognize patterns and choose appropriate strategies in real-world situations. The technique is particularly powerful for subjects that involve categorization or pattern recognition. In mathematics, mix different types of problems within each practice session. In language learning, alternate between vocabulary, grammar, listening, and speaking practice. In music, practice different pieces and techniques within each session, rather than focusing on one piece until it's perfect. While interleaving can feel frustrating because you don't see immediate improvement in any single area. Research shows it leads to better performance on tests taken days or weeks later. Students who use interleaved practice often score 20 to 40% higher on delayed tests compared to those who use blocked practice, even though blocked practice feels more effective during the learning process itself. Hack 16. The name repetition strategy. When you meet someone new, use their name 3 times within the first few minutes of conversation, but do so naturally rather than mechanically. Say their name when they first introduce themselves. Nice to meet you, Sarah. Use it during the conversation. Sarah, what do you think about that? And repeat it when saying goodbye. It was great talking with you, Sarah. This repetition works because it moves the name from your short-term memory buffer into more permanent storage through a process called elaborative rehearsal. Each time you use the name, you're creating another memory trace and strengthening existing ones. The key is spacing these repetitions naturally throughout the interaction, rather than clustering them together. The technique is most effective when you pair name repetition with attention to the person's face and other distinctive characteristics. Make eye contact when saying their name and try to notice unique features that you can associate with the name. This creates multiple retrieval cues for the same information. Research in social psychology shows that people not only remember names better when using this technique, but they also form more positive impressions of people who use their names appropriately during conversation. Names are closely tied to personal identity, and using someone's name signals that you see them as an individual rather than just another face in the crowd. Be careful not to overuse names, as this can seem manipulative or awkward. The goal is natural integration that enhances both memory and social connection. Hack 17. The face feature association method. Pick one distinctive feature of a person's face and create a strong mental association between that feature and their name. This technique leverages your brain's exceptional ability to remember faces, while providing a systematic way to link facial memory to name recall. Choose a feature that stands out to you. It might be their eyes, smile, hair, facial structure, or even something like glasses or a distinctive way of speaking. Then create a meaningful connection between that feature and their name. If you meet a Jennifer with particularly bright, sparkling eyes, you might imagine her as Jewel Jennifer because her eyes sparkle like gems. The associations don't need to be logical or sophisticated. They just need to be memorable for you. If you meet a Mike with a big smile, you might imagine a microphone coming out of his mouth when he smiles. The more personal and unusual the association, the more likely you are to remember it. This technique works because it creates a visual-verbal bridge that connects your excellent facial recognition abilities with name recall. Most people can recognize thousands of faces, but struggle with names because faces are processed by dedicated neural systems, while names are arbitrary verbal labels with no inherent meaning. Practice this technique by creating associations for people you see regularly: coworkers, neighbors, cashiers at stores you frequent. The more you practice, the faster and more automatic the association process becomes. Hack 18. The rhyme and reason technique. Create rhymes, alliteration, or wordplay with people's names to make them more memorable. Chatty Cathy, Handy Andy, or Tall Paul might seem silly or childish, but these associations stick in memory because they engage both phonetic and semantic processing systems in your brain simultaneously. The technique works because rhymes and alliteration create what psychologists call phonological hooks, memorable sound patterns that make information easier to retrieve. This is why advertising jingles, poetry, and songs are so memorable compared to prose. Your brain has specialized systems for processing rhythm, rhyme, and sound patterns that evolved long before written language. Don't worry about creating sophisticated or flattering associations. Focus on what's memorable for you. If you meet a Bob who has curly hair, Bouncy Bob might work perfectly, even if it's not particularly clever. The goal is creating a mental hook that helps you retrieve the name when you see the face again. You can extend this technique by creating short phrases or sentences that incorporate both the name and relevant information about the person. Marketing Mary might help you remember both her name and her job, while Tennis Tom connects his name to his favorite hobby. The key is making these associations immediately when you first meet someone, while their face and name are still active in your working memory. The longer you wait to create the association, the harder it becomes and the less effective the technique will be. Hack 19. The Introduction Echo Method. When someone introduces themselves to you, immediately introduce them to someone else, if possible, or repeat their introduction back to them in a slightly different form. This forces you to retrieve their name from memory almost immediately after hearing it, which dramatically strengthens the initial memory trace. For example, if someone says, "Hi, I'm David," you might respond with, "David, I'd like you to meet my colleague Sarah," or simply, "Nice to meet you, David. I'm your name." This immediate retrieval practice takes advantage of what memory researchers call the testing effect. Attempting to recall information strengthens memory more than just hearing or reading it again. The technique is particularly powerful because it happens during the critical window when the name is still active in your short-term memory. If you wait even a few minutes before attempting to use the name, it may have already faded from immediate memory, making retrieval much more difficult. When introducing someone to others, provide context that helps everyone remember. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet David from the accounting department." Gives both people additional information to hang the name on. This also demonstrates social awareness and helps create connections between people. If there's no one around to make introductions to, you can still use the echo method by repeating the name back in your initial response, or by asking a follow-up question that uses their name. "David, how do you know the host of this party?" This natural repetition serves the same memory strengthening function. Hack 20. The Context Anchor Strategy. Associate each person's name with specific contextual information about where and how you met them. Sarah from the coffee shop, Mike from yoga class, or Jennifer from the conference creates environmental and situational cues that help trigger name recall when you encounter them again, even in completely different settings. This technique works by creating multiple retrieval pathways for the same information. Instead of having just one route to recall someone's name through their face, you now have several. Their face is the location where you met, the activity you were doing, and other people who were present. The more retrieval cues you create, the more likely you are to successfully recall the name when needed. Context anchors are particularly helpful for people you don't see regularly. When you encounter Sarah from the coffee shop at a grocery store 6 months later, the contextual association helps bridge the gap between your original memory and the current situation. You can strengthen context anchors by adding details about the circumstances of your meeting, what you were both doing, what you talked about, what they were wearing, or what the weather was like. These additional details create a richer memory that's more resistant to forgetting. The technique also works in reverse when you're trying to remember someone's name. Mentally revisit the context where you met them. Sometimes recreating the environmental and social context in your mind can trigger name recall even when looking at their face alone doesn't work. Hack 21. The Pomodoro Technique. Work intensively for 25 minutes, then take a mandatory 5-minute break. After completing 4 of these cycles, take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. This technique, developed by Francesco Cirillo in the 1980s, leverages your brain's natural attention rhythms and prevents the mental fatigue that accumulates during sustained cognitive work. The 25-minute work period is carefully calibrated to match average attention span limits. Research in cognitive psychology shows that most people can maintain peak focus for about 20 to 30 minutes before attention begins to waver and performance declines. By stopping before you reach this fatigue point, you maintain high-quality focus throughout your work session. The 5-minute breaks are crucial for cognitive recovery. During these breaks, avoid mentally demanding activities like checking email or social media. Instead, stand up, move around, look out a window, or do light stretching. This allows your brain's attention networks to reset and recover. Studies show the Pomodoro technique can increase productivity by up to 25%, while reducing the perceived effort required for tasks. People using this method report feeling less stressed and more in control of their work. The technique is particularly effective for tasks that require sustained mental effort, like writing, studying, coding, or detailed analysis. Track how many Pomodoro's different types of tasks require. This helps you estimate time more accurately and plan your days more realistically. Many people discover they can accomplish more in focused 25-minute blocks than in hours of distracted work. Hack 22. The 2-minute rule. If any task takes less than 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately rather than adding it to your to-do list or postponing it for later. This simple rule prevents small tasks from accumulating into overwhelming mental clutter, while taking advantage of your current mental momentum. The rule works because task switching has cognitive costs. Every time you stop one activity and start another, your brain needs time to adjust and refocus. Research shows this switching cost can range from a few seconds to several minutes, depending on the complexity of the tasks involved. By handling quick tasks immediately, you avoid these switching costs later. 2-minute tasks include responding to simple emails, filing documents, washing dishes immediately after use, putting items back where they belong, or making brief phone calls. While each individual task seems insignificant, the accumulation of unfinished small tasks creates mental burden and reduces your ability to focus on more important work. The technique also leverages what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect. Your brain dedicates mental resources to tracking unfinished tasks, which reduces capacity available for current activities. Completing small tasks immediately frees up this mental space. Be careful not to let 2-minute tasks interrupt deep work sessions. If you're in a flow state working on something important, capture the 2-minute task in a note and handle it during your next break rather than immediately switching focus. Hack 23. The single tasking protocol. Focus completely on one task at a time, giving it your full attention and mental resources. Despite popular beliefs about multitasking efficiency, decades of research in cognitive psychology consistently demonstrate that multitasking actually decreases efficiency, increases errors, and reduces the quality of work output. What people call multitasking is actually rapid task switching. Your brain cannot genuinely focus on 2 complex tasks simultaneously. Instead, it quickly alternates attention between tasks. Each switch requires time for your brain to disengage from one task, reorient to another, and rebuild focus. These switching costs can consume 20 to 40% of your productive time. Studies show that people who practice deliberate single-tasking complete projects up to 50% faster and with significantly fewer mistakes than chronic multitaskers. Single-taskers also report higher job satisfaction and lower stress levels because they can engage more deeply with their work. To implement single-tasking effectively, choose one task and eliminate distractions from your environment. Close unnecessary browser tabs. Put your phone in another room and let colleagues know you're in a focused work period. If other tasks or ideas come to mind, quickly capture them in a note without switching your primary focus. The technique requires practice because our modern environment constantly encourages multitasking. Start with shorter single-task periods and gradually extend them as your concentration abilities strengthen. Many people discover they can accomplish in 2 hours of single-tasking what previously required an entire day of distracted work. Hack 24. The phone distance effect. Keep your smartphone physically separated from your workspace, preferably in another room while doing important mental work. Research by Dr. Adrian Ward at the University of Texas has shown that the mere presence of your smartphone reduces cognitive performance. even when the device is turned off and placed face down. The effect occurs because part of your brain's attention system is constantly monitoring the phone's presence and working to resist the urge to check it. This creates what researchers call brain drain, a subtle but measurable reduction in available cognitive capacity. People who keep their phones in another room during cognitive tasks perform 10 to 20% better on measures of working memory, tension control, and fluid intelligence. The distance effect works because it eliminates both the temptation to check your phone and the unconscious mental effort required to resist that temptation. When your phone isn't visible or easily accessible, your brain stops dedicating resources to monitoring and resisting it. This technique is particularly important for tasks requiring sustained focus like studying, writing, problem solving, or detailed analysis. The cognitive benefits are most noticeable during the first 10 to 15 minutes after removing your phone, as your brain gradually allocates more resources to your primary task. If you absolutely must keep your phone nearby for work purposes, at minimum, turn off all non-essential notifications and place it face down outside your direct line of sight. However, complete physical separation provides the maximum cognitive benefit. Hack 25. The background noise optimization. Discover your optimal background noise level for different types of mental work. Research shows that the relationship between noise and cognitive performance follows an inverted U-shape. Both too little and too much noise can impair focus, while moderate levels often enhance performance. For creative tasks, moderate background noise around 70 decibels, about the level of a busy coffee shop, can actually enhance creative thinking by promoting abstract processing and reducing overfocus on details. This is why many people feel more creative in coffee shops or with ambient music playing. For analytical tasks requiring precise attention to detail, quieter environments typically work better. Complex problem solving, mathematical calculations, and careful proofreading generally benefit from minimal auditory distractions. Individual differences are significant. Some people are highly sensitive to any background noise, while others need auditory stimulation to maintain alertness. Experiment with different types of background sounds: instrumental music, nature sounds, white noise, pink noise, or complete silence. Pay attention to how different soundscapes affect your performance on different types of tasks. You might discover that classical music helps with writing but hurts mathematical thinking, or that nature sounds enhance reading comprehension but distract from creative work. Consider using noise-canceling headphones or earplugs if you work in noisy environments. The goal is achieving optimal auditory conditions for your brain's current task, whether that means adding helpful background noise or removing distracting sounds. Hack 26. The ultradian rhythm alignment. Your brain naturally cycles through periods of high and low alertness approximately every 90 minutes throughout the day. These ultradian rhythms affect everything from attention span to memory consolidation to creative thinking. By identifying and aligning with your personal rhythm patterns, you can optimize your schedule for peak mental performance. Most people experience their highest alertness and cognitive capacity 2 to 4 hours after waking, regardless of whether they're naturally morning people or night owls. This peak period is ideal for your most challenging mental work: complex problem solving, creative projects, important decisions, or learning difficult material. Pay attention to your energy levels throughout the day for a week or two. Notice when you feel most alert, when concentration becomes difficult, and when you get a second wind of energy. These patterns are remarkably consistent for most individuals once you start tracking them. Schedule your most demanding cognitive work during natural peak periods and save routine tasks like email, administrative work, or simple organizational tasks for lower energy periods. Many people waste their best mental hours on low-value activities and then struggle with important work when their brains are tired. The post-lunch dip around 1 to 3 p.m. is nearly universal and represents a natural low point in your ultradian cycle. Instead of fighting this with caffeine, consider taking a brief nap 1020 minutes, or doing light physical activity to help your brain transition to the next cycle. Understanding these rhythms also helps explain why willpower and decision-making quality fluctuate throughout the day. Make important decisions during peak periods and avoid critical choices when you're in natural low-energy phases. Hack 27. The Attention Restoration Theory. Spend time in natural environments or looking at natural scenes to restore your mental energy and improve subsequent focus. Even looking at photographs of nature for just 40 seconds can reduce mental fatigue and improve performance on attention-demanding tasks. This technique is based on attention restoration theory, developed by environmental psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan. The theory distinguishes between directed attention, the effortful focus required for work tasks, and fascination, the effortless attention captured by interesting natural phenomena. Natural environments engage fascination while allowing directed attention systems to recover. Natural scenes work because they contain what researchers call soft fascination, gentle, non-demanding stimuli that capture attention without requiring mental effort. Watching clouds move, observing trees sway in the wind, or listening to flowing water engages your attention in a restorative rather than depleting way. The effect works even with indoor plants, nature photography, or nature documentaries. Though outdoor exposure provides additional benefits from fresh air, natural light, and physical movement. A 5-minute walk outside can restore attention capacity equivalent to a 20-minute indoor break. Many successful professionals incorporate brief nature breaks into their workdays. Eating lunch outside, taking walking meetings, or simply looking out windows during breaks. The technique is particularly valuable for people who work in artificial environments with limited natural elements. Hack 28. The Implementation Intention Strategy. Instead of relying on general intentions like "I'll focus better" or "I'll avoid distractions," create specific if-then statements that automate good behaviors. If I feel my attention wandering while reading, then I will take 3 deep breaths and return my focus to the text. If I hear my phone buzz during work time, then I will ignore it and check messages during my next scheduled break. Implementation intentions work by creating pre-planned responses to anticipated situations. When you encounter the specified trigger, the if part, the planned response, the then part, activates automatically without requiring willpower or decision-making. This automation is crucial because it bypasses the mental effort typically required to choose good behaviors over tempting alternatives. Research by psychologist Peter Galwitzer shows that people who create implementation intentions are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through on their goals compared to those who rely on general good intentions alone. The technique works because it transfers behavioral control from conscious decision-making, which is limited and depletes throughout the day, to automatic triggering, which requires no mental effort. Create implementation intentions for your most common focus challenges. If you frequently get distracted by social media, plan specific responses. If I feel the urge to check social media during work time, then I will write down what I'm thinking about and return to my task. If you struggle with procrastination, create specific start triggers. If it's 9 a.m. on a weekday, then I will immediately begin working on my most important project. The more specific your if-then statements, the more effective they become. Vague triggers like "when I need to focus" are less effective than specific triggers like "when I sit down at my desk with my morning coffee." Hack 29. The External Memory Principle. Systematically use external tools and systems to reduce the cognitive load on your working memory. Your working memory can only hold about 7 items simultaneously, and when it's full, your ability to think clearly, make good decisions, and focus effectively becomes severely compromised. Develop habits of immediately capturing information externally, rather than trying to hold it mentally. Use calendars for scheduling, notebooks for ideas, task management apps for to-dos, and organized filing systems for reference information. The goal is freeing up mental space for actual thinking rather than information storage. This principle extends beyond simple note-taking. Organize your physical environment so you don't have to remember where things are located. Create standardized procedures for recurring tasks so you don't have to refigure them out each time. Use templates, checklists, and standard formats to reduce the mental effort required for routine activities. Many successful professionals have highly developed external memory systems that allow them to handle complex responsibilities without mental overwhelm. They might use digital tools like Notion or Obsidian for knowledge management, physical filing systems for documents, and consistent naming conventions for files and folders. The key is making your external memory systems reliable and easily accessible. If you can't trust your external system, or if it's difficult to use, you'll revert to trying to remember everything mentally, which defeats the purpose. Research in cognitive psychology shows that people who effectively use external memory tools perform better on complex tasks and report lower stress levels because they can dedicate their full cognitive capacity to thinking rather than remembering. Hack 30. The chunking strategy. Break large amounts of information into smaller, manageable chunks that respect your working memory limitations, while creating meaningful patterns that aid comprehension and recall. This technique leverages your brain's natural tendency to organize information into coherent groups. Phone numbers demonstrate chunking perfectly. -5,551,234,567 is much harder to remember than mosque, then 555,1234567, because the second version creates meaningful chunks that fit within working memory capacity. The same principle applies to all types of information: long lists, complex procedures, detailed instructions, or extensive reading material. When chunking information, look for natural breaking points or logical groupings. If you're memorizing a speech, break it into main points rather than trying to memorize it word by word. If you're learning a complex skill, divide it into component subskills that you can master individually before combining them. The optimal chunk size varies depending on your expertise level. Beginners might need smaller chunks, 3 to 4 items, while experts can handle larger chunks, 7 to 9 items, because they can recognize meaningful patterns that novices miss. A chess master sees board positions as meaningful patterns rather than individual piece locations. Create hierarchical chunk structures for complex material. Start with major categories, then break each category into subcategories, then break subcategories into specific details. This creates a mental filing system that makes information much easier to organize, understand, and retrieve when needed. Hack 31. The progressive complexity method. When learning complex skills or tackling difficult projects, start with the simplest possible version and gradually increase difficulty as your competence grows. This scaffolding approach allows your brain to build neural pathways progressively without becoming overwhelmed by complexity. The technique respects how your brain actually develops expertise. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition. But if tasks are too difficult initially, you can't perform enough successful repetitions to build strong pathways. Starting simple ensures early success, which motivates continued practice and builds confidence. For example, when learning to drive, you start in empty parking lots before progressing to quiet residential streets, then busier roads, and finally highways and complex traffic situations. Each stage builds skills needed for the next level, while maintaining a manageable challenge level. Apply this principle to intellectual challenges as well. When learning programming, start with simple programs before attempting complex applications. When studying mathematics, master basic concepts thoroughly before moving to advanced topics. When developing presentation skills, practice with small, friendly audiences before speaking to large or intimidating groups. The key is ensuring that each level provides appropriate challenge. Difficult. Enough to promote growth, but not so difficult that it causes frustration or failure. Research in educational psychology shows that optimal learning occurs when tasks are slightly beyond your current ability level, but still achievable with effort. This approach takes longer initially, but results in stronger, more durable skills and knowledge. People who use progressive complexity develop more robust expertise that transfers better to new situations. Hack 32. The cognitive switching cost awareness. Become consciously aware of the mental energy required to switch between different types of activities, and organize your schedule to minimize unnecessary cognitive transitions. Every time you switch between different types of mental work, your brain needs time and energy to adjust its processing mode. Research shows that switching costs can range from a few seconds for simple tasks to several minutes for complex cognitive work. When you shift from writing to mathematical calculation to creative brainstorming, your brain must reconfigure its neural networks for each type of thinking. These transitions consume mental energy and temporarily reduce performance quality. Minimize switching costs by batching similar types of work together. Group all your email responses into one session rather than checking and responding throughout the day. Dedicate specific time blocks to creative work, analytical tasks, administrative duties, and social interactions. When switches are unavoidable, create transition rituals that help your brain shift modes more efficiently. This might involve taking a few deep breaths, briefly reviewing what you're about to work on, or doing a physical movement that signals a mental transition. Pay attention to which types of task switches are most costly for you personally. Some people find the transition from creative work to analytical work particularly difficult, while others struggle with shifting from solitary work to social interaction. Understanding your personal switching costs helps you plan schedules that optimize your mental energy usage. The goal isn't eliminating all task switches, that's impossible in modern life, but being strategic about when and how you make transitions to preserve cognitive resources for your most important work. Hack 33. The Mindfulness Meditation Primer. Even 5 minutes of daily mindfulness meditation can produce measurable improvements in sustained attention, working memory, and emotional regulation. Neuroscience research using brain imaging shows that regular meditation literally changes brain structure, strengthening areas responsible for attention control while reducing activity in regions associated with mind wandering. Start with basic breath awareness meditation. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and focus on the physical sensations of breathing. When you notice your mind has wandered to thoughts, feelings, or external sounds, gently return attention to your breath without judging yourself for the distraction. The key word is gently. Mind wandering is not a failure. It's normal brain activity. The valuable part of meditation is noticing when your mind has wandered and practicing the skill of redirecting attention. Each time you catch a wandering mind and return focus to your breath, you're strengthening neural pathways responsible for attention control. Consistency matters more than duration. 5 minutes daily produces better results than 30 minutes once per week. Start with just 2 to 3 minutes if 5 feels overwhelming. Many meditation apps provide guided sessions that can help beginners learn proper technique. The benefits extend far beyond meditation sessions themselves. People who meditate regularly show improved focus during work, better emotional regulation under stress, reduced anxiety, and enhanced ability to stay present during conversations and daily activities. Research indicates that benefits begin appearing after just 8 weeks of regular practice, with continued improvements for months or years of consistent meditation. Hack 34. The Attention Anchoring Technique. Choose a simple, always available physical sensation as an attention anchor that you can return to whenever you notice your mind wandering. This might be the feeling of your feet on the ground, your back against a chair, your hands resting on a surface, or the sensation of air moving in and out of your nostrils. Throughout your day, periodically check in with your chosen anchor sensation. When you notice your mind has drifted into worry, planning, or distraction, gently return attention to your anchor. This creates a reliable method for recenter your focus that doesn't require any special equipment or circumstances. The technique works because it provides a consistent target for attention that's always accessible. Unlike meditation techniques that require specific postures or quiet environments, attention anchoring can be practiced anywhere. during meetings, while commuting, or in the middle of challenging work tasks. Physical sensations make excellent anchors because they exist only in the present moment. When your attention is focused on current physical sensations, you're naturally pulled out of mental time travel, worry about the future or rumination about the past, and into present moment awareness. Practice using your attention anchor during low-stress situations first, so the technique becomes automatic before you need it during challenging moments. Many people find that regular anchor practice improves their overall ability to concentrate because it strengthens the mental muscle responsible for directing and maintaining attention. The anchor technique is particularly valuable for people who experience anxiety or overthinking, as it provides a concrete alternative focus when mental activity becomes overwhelming or unproductive. Hack 35. The Selective Attention Training. Practice the coin sorting exercise to strengthen your brain's ability to filter relevant information while ignoring distractions. Scatter different types of coins, pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, randomly on a table. Then time yourself finding and collecting only specific types while ignoring the others. Start by collecting just pennies as quickly as possible while ignoring all other coins. Then try collecting quarters while ignoring pennies, nickels, and dimes. Progress to more complex challenges like collecting coins from specific years or sorting multiple types simultaneously. This exercise trains your selective attention system, the cognitive ability to focus on relevant information while filtering out irrelevant distractions. In our modern environment filled with competing demands for attention, this skill is crucial for effective functioning. The benefits transfer to real-world situations where you need to focus on specific information while ignoring distractions. Reading in noisy environments, listening to important conversations at parties. Finding specific information in dense text, or focusing on relevant details during presentations all rely on selective attention abilities. You can create variations using other materials, sort colored objects, find specific letters in text, or identify particular sounds in audio recordings. The key is practicing the mental skill of maintaining focus on your target while actively ignoring competing stimuli. Regular practice with selective attention exercises can improve your ability to concentrate in distracting environments by 15 to 25%. The improvements typically become noticeable after 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice and continue developing with longer training periods. Hack 36. The Sustained Attention Response Task. Set a timer for 10 minutes and count your breaths from 1 to 10. Then start over at 1. When you notice your mind has wandered and you've lost count, simply return to 1 without judgment or frustration. This deceptively simple exercise provides powerful training for sustained attention and metacognitive awareness. The task trains to crucial cognitive skills simultaneously. First, it develops sustained attention, the ability to maintain focus on a single task over extended periods. Second, it enhances metacognitive awareness, the ability to notice when your mind has wandered from its intended focus. Most people discover this exercise is much more challenging than it initially appears. Counting to 10 repeatedly seems trivial, but maintaining consistent focus without mind wandering for a full 10 minutes requires significant mental discipline. This difficulty is precisely what makes the exercise valuable. You're working out your attention muscles. Don't aim for perfect performance. The goal isn't to count perfectly for 10 minutes without any mental wandering. Instead, the goal is noticing quickly when your mind has wandered and developing the skill of gently returning focus to your intended target. Track your progress over time. Notice whether you can maintain focus for longer periods before mind wandering occurs, whether you notice wandering more quickly, and whether returning focus becomes easier and more automatic. The skills developed through this exercise transfer directly to real-world focus challenges. People who practice sustained attention tasks show improved performance on everything from reading comprehension to driving safety to work productivity. Hack 37. The Environmental Attention Design. Systematically organize your physical environment to support sustained focus and minimize attention-grabbing distractions. Environmental psychology research demonstrates that cluttered, chaotic spaces increase cortisol levels and decrease cognitive performance, while organized, purposeful environments enhance focus and reduce mental fatigue. Remove visual distractions from your primary workspace. This includes unnecessary decorations, unrelated books, or papers. Multiple computer monitors showing different information, and any objects that might capture attention during work sessions. The goal is creating a clean visual field that doesn't compete with your intended focus. Control lighting conditions for optimal cognitive performance. Natural light is generally best, but avoid glare or harsh shadows that force your visual system to work harder. Many people benefit from adjustable desk lamps that provide consistent, comfortable illumination regardless of outside conditions. Position yourself strategically within your environment. Face away from high-traffic areas where movement might catch your peripheral vision. If possible, sit with your back to doors or walkways so unexpected movement doesn't automatically capture attention. Consider the psychological impact of your environment's organization and aesthetics. Spaces that feel calm, purposeful, and under your control promote better focus than spaces that feel chaotic or overwhelming. This doesn't mean your workspace must be sterile. Personal items can be motivating, but everything should have a clear purpose and designated place. Temperature, air quality, and background noise also significantly impact attention. Slightly cool temperatures, 68–72 degrees Fahrenheit, typically promote alertness, while overly warm environments can cause drowsiness and reduced cognitive performance. Hack 38. The attention switching exercise. Practice deliberately switching attention between different sensory modalities to develop cognitive flexibility and attention control. Spend 1 minute focusing exclusively on auditory information. What can you hear right now? Then switch to visual information. What details can you see? Then focus on physical sensations. What do you feel in your body? This exercise trains your ability to voluntarily direct attention, which is a fundamental skill underlying all other concentration abilities. Most of the time, your attention switches automatically based on whatever stimuli are most compelling or urgent. Practicing voluntary attention switching gives you more conscious control over this typically automatic process. Expand the exercise by switching between different types of mental activities. Spend time focused on current sensory experience, then switch to planning future activities. Then to remembering past events, then to analyzing current problems. Notice how different types of mental activity feel different and require different cognitive resources. Practice rapid switching as well as sustained focus. Sometimes effective attention control requires maintaining steady focus on one target for extended periods. Other times, it requires quickly and efficiently moving between multiple targets. Both abilities are important for optimal cognitive performance. The skills developed through attention switching exercises transfer to real-world situations, where you need flexible attention control. This includes everything from studying complex material that requires switching between different concepts to managing multiple work projects that demand different types of thinking. Many people discover that practicing attention switching actually improves their ability to sustain focus as well, because voluntary attention control becomes stronger and more reliable with training. Hack 39. The monotasking meditation. Choose a simple daily activity like brushing your teeth, washing dishes, or folding laundry and transform it into attention training by focusing completely on the sensations, movements, and experience of that single activity. This practice turns routine tasks into opportunities for strengthening concentration skills. During your chosen activity, pay attention to every detail you can notice. If you're washing dishes, focus on the temperature of the water, the texture of soap bubbles, the weight of each dish, the sound of water running, the movements of your hands and arms. When your mind wanders to other thoughts, gently return attention to the immediate sensory experience. This technique provides attention training that integrates seamlessly into your existing routine without requiring additional time or special circumstances. Since you're already performing these activities daily, you're essentially getting free meditation practice while accomplishing necessary tasks. The practice is particularly valuable because it develops present moment awareness in ordinary situations. Many people can focus well during formal meditation sessions, but struggle to maintain attention during daily activities. Monotasking meditation bridges this gap by training attention skills in realistic contexts. Choose activities that don't require complex decision-making or safety attention. Avoid practicing with driving or cooking. For example, simple, repetitive activities work best because they provide consistent sensory input without demanding problem-solving or planning. Over time, you may notice that these routine activities become more enjoyable and relaxing when performed with full attention. In addition to providing valuable concentration training, Hack 40, the Digital Attention Hygiene Protocol, implements specific rules and systems for digital device usage to protect your attention from the fragmenting effects of constant connectivity. Research consistently shows that frequent interruptions from notifications, messages, and digital stimuli significantly reduce deep thinking capacity and sustained focus ability. Create designated times for checking email, social media, and messages rather than responding to notifications throughout the day. Many successful professionals check email only 2 to 3 times daily at scheduled intervals, which allows for extended periods of uninterrupted focus while still maintaining reasonable responsiveness. Turn off all non-essential notifications on your devices. Most apps request notification permissions for marketing purposes rather than genuine utility. Carefully curate which notifications you allow, queuing only those that represent true emergencies or time-sensitive communications. Use website and app blocking tools during focused work periods. Applications like Freedom, Cold Turkey, or built-in screen time controls can prevent access to distracting websites and apps during designated focus times. The goal is removing temptation entirely rather than relying on willpower to resist digital distractions. Establish phone-free zones and times. Keep devices out of the bedroom to protect sleep quality. Avoid phones during meals to enhance digestion and social connection, and maintain device-free periods before bed to allow your brain to wind down naturally. The key is being intentional about your digital consumption rather than letting devices and applications control your attention patterns. People who implement digital attention hygiene report improved focus, reduced anxiety, better sleep quality, and enhanced ability to engage deeply with both work and personal relationships. Hack 41. The Next of October 10 Rule. Before making any significant decision, systematically consider its impact across 3 different time horizons. How will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years? This temporal perspective technique, developed by business writer Susie Welch, helps balance immediate desires with long-term consequences and often reveals optimal choices that aren't immediately obvious. The 10-minute perspective captures immediate emotional reactions and short-term consequences. Will you feel good about this choice right after making it? Are there immediate benefits or costs you need to consider? This time frame helps you understand the instant gratification or immediate stress associated with different options. The 10-month perspective focuses on medium-term implications. How will this decision affect your relationships, career, health, or financial situation over the coming year? This time frame often reveals consequences that aren't visible in the immediate moment, but are crucial for overall well-being and goal achievement. The 10-year perspective considers long-term life direction and legacy effects. Will this decision move you closer to or further from the person you want to become? How will it impact your long-term relationships, career trajectory, health, and personal growth? Many poor decisions result from overweighting immediate benefits while underestimating long-term costs. Or conversely, being so focused on long-term goals that you ignore legitimate short-term needs. The Deaths of October 10 rule forces balanced consideration across all three timeframes. Practice using this framework for both major life decisions and smaller daily choices. You'll often discover that decisions that seem difficult become much clearer when you consider their implications across different time horizons. Hack 42. The pre-mortem analysis before starting any important project or making a major decision. Imagine that it has completely failed and work backward to identify everything that could have contributed to that failure. This technique, developed by psychologist Gary Klein, helps you anticipate problems and create better plans by overcoming optimism bias and blind spot identification. The process involves gathering your team or thinking individually about your project. Then imagining you're looking back from a point in the future where the project has failed dramatically. Ask yourself, what went wrong? What early warning signs did we ignore? What assumptions proved incorrect? What external factors caused problems we didn't anticipate? Generates as many potential failure modes as possible without immediately judging their likelihood or importance. The goal is comprehensive brainstorming about everything that could go wrong. This might include resource shortages, key personnel leaving, market changes, technical problems, regulatory issues, or simple execution failures. After identifying potential problems, evaluate which ones are most likely and most damaging, then create specific plans to prevent or mitigate these risks. Some problems can be prevented through better planning, others require contingency plans, and some might suggest fundamental changes to your approach. Research shows that teams using pre-mortem analysis reduce project failure rates by up to 30% and identify 30 to 40% more potential problems compared to traditional planning methods. The technique works because it temporarily suspends optimism and forces systematic consideration of what could go wrong. Pre-mortems are particularly valuable for decisions involving significant time, money, or reputation investments where failure would be costly and difficult to recover from. Hack 43. The satisficing principle. For decisions that aren't critically important, choose the first option that meets your minimum acceptable criteria instead of exhaustively searching for the perfect choice. Psychologist Herbert Simon's research demonstrates that satisficers are generally happier and less stressed than maximizers who exhaust themselves seeking optimal outcomes for every decision. The principle recognizes that decision-making itself has costs: time, mental energy, and emotional stress. For many decisions, the cost of finding the perfect option exceeds the benefit of having that perfect option rather than a merely good option. Satisficing allows you to make reasonable decisions quickly and preserve mental resources for more important choices. Define your minimum acceptable criteria before beginning your search process. For choosing a restaurant, this might be decent food quality, reasonable price, and acceptable location. Once you find an option that meets these criteria, choose it without continuing to search for potentially better alternatives. The technique is particularly valuable for decisions you face frequently. Choosing what to wear, what to eat for lunch, which route to take to work, or which Netflix show to watch are rarely important enough to justify extensive deliberation. Having standard criteria for these recurring choices speeds up your decision process and reduces decision fatigue. Reserve maximizing behavior for decisions that truly matter: career choices, major purchases, important relationships, health decisions, or choices that will affect you for months or years. For these significant decisions, investing extra time and energy to find optimal solutions is justified. Research shows that satisficers report higher life satisfaction, partly because they spend less time second-guessing their choices and more time enjoying the outcomes of reasonable decisions. Hack 44. The Devil's Advocate Protocol. For important decisions, systematically argue against your preferred option before finalizing your choice. Assign someone the explicit role of devil's advocate, or, if working alone, dedicate specific time to identifying weaknesses in your preferred approach. This technique counteracts confirmation bias and helps reveal blind spots in your reasoning. The devil's advocate role should be taken seriously, not just offered token resistance. The goal is genuinely trying to find fatal flaws, overlooked risks, or superior alternatives to your initial preference. This might involve researching opposing viewpoints, interviewing people who disagree with your approach, or conducting thought experiments about worst-case scenarios. When working in groups, establish ground rules that make devil's advocacy psychologically safe. The person arguing against the preferred option should be rewarded for finding legitimate problems, rather than criticized for being negative. Frame it as a valuable service to the team rather than personal attack on the original idea. For individual decisions, create structured devil's advocate sessions where you spend equal time arguing for and against your preferred option. Write down the strongest possible case against your choice, including evidence, reasoning, and potential consequences you might be overlooking. Research shows that teams using formal devil's advocate processes make more accurate decisions and avoid costly mistakes compared to groups that rely on informal discussion alone. The technique is particularly valuable for decisions involving significant resources, reputational risk, or irreversible consequences. The key is genuine intellectual humility, being willing to change your mind if the devil's advocate process reveals serious flaws in your reasoning or uncovers superior alternatives you hadn't considered. Hack 45. The sunk cost awareness. Check. Before continuing with any project, relationship, or course of action, honestly assess whether you're persisting because it makes rational sense based on future potential, or because you've already invested significant time, money, or effort that you don't want to waste. The sunk cost fallacy causes people to make irrational decisions to justify past investments rather than focusing on future probabilities and payoffs. The psychological challenge is that admitting a mistake or changing course feels like confirming that your previous efforts were wasted. However, past investments are already gone, regardless of your future decisions. The only rational approach is evaluating whether continued investment is likely to produce valuable outcomes, independent of what you've already spent. Create a structured decision process for evaluating ongoing commitments. First, clearly define what additional time, energy, or resources would be required to continue. Second, honestly estimate the probability and value of success if you continue. Third, consider what alternative uses exist for those same resources. Fourth, make your decision based solely on this forward-looking analysis. This framework is particularly important for business projects, career paths, educational programs, and relationships where significant sunk costs can cloud judgment. Many successful entrepreneurs and executives regularly kill projects that aren't working, regardless of previous investments, because they understand that good money shouldn't follow bad money. The technique requires emotional discipline because it means acknowledging mistakes and accepting losses. However, people who master sunk cost awareness make significantly better long-term decisions and avoid the escalating commitment traps that can consume enormous resources while producing minimal results. Practice with small decisions first to develop comfort with the mental framework before applying it to major life choices. Hack 46. The incubation effect. When you're stuck on a difficult problem and conscious effort isn't producing solutions, deliberately step away and engage in a completely different activity for a while. Your subconscious mind continues working on the problem during this break, often leading to sudden insights or breakthrough solutions when you return to the challenge. The incubation effect works because conscious problem solving sometimes creates mental constraints that prevent you from seeing creative solutions. When you stop actively trying to solve the problem, your brain's default mode network takes over and begins making novel connections between seemingly unrelated pieces of information stored in your memory. Research shows that people who take breaks from difficult problems solve them 40% more often than those who persist without rest. The effect is strongest when the break activity is genuinely different from the original problem. Physical exercise, creative activities, social interaction, or even mundane tasks like housework can be effective. The key is truly disengaging from the problem rather than continuing to worry about it during your break. This mental letting go allows your subconscious processing systems to operate without interference from conscious analytical thinking. Incubation periods can range from minutes to days, depending on problem complexity. For creative challenges, overnight incubation is often particularly effective because sleep consolidates memories and creates new associations between previously unconnected ideas. Many breakthrough discoveries in science, art, and business have resulted from incubation periods. The chemist August discovered the ring structure of benzene after dreaming about a snake biting its own tail. The technique is so reliable that many creative professionals deliberately build incubation time into their problem-solving process. Hack 47. The constraint addition method. When facing a complex problem with numerous possible approaches, try adding artificial limitations or constraints to force more creative solutions. This counterintuitive strategy often leads to breakthrough innovations because constraints force your brain to explore unusual solution paths that unlimited approaches might miss. Constraints work by eliminating obvious or conventional solutions, forcing you to think more creatively about how to achieve your goals within the imposed limitations. Some of history's greatest innovations emerged from working within severe constraints. The development of miniaturized electronics was driven by space program weight limitations, and many classic film techniques were invented to work around budget constraints. Types of constraints you can add include time limits, resource restrictions, tool limitations, or process requirements. If you're struggling to improve a business process, try solving it with half the current budget. If you're stuck on a creative project, impose a strict deadline. If you're trying to improve communication, require that all explanations use only simple words. The constraint addition method is particularly effective for problems where you have too many options and feel overwhelmed by possibilities. By artificially narrowing your option space, you can focus more intensively on fewer approaches and often discover elegant solutions that work within the constraints and beyond them. Practice this technique on small problems first to develop comfort with constraint-based thinking. Many people initially resist adding constraints because it seems to make problems harder. But the creative benefits usually become apparent quickly once you experience breakthrough solutions that emerged from working within limitations. Hack 48. The analogical problem solving. Actively search for similar problems in completely different domains and adapt their solutions to your current challenge. Cross-domain analogies often reveal innovative approaches that direct analysis within your field might miss because they bypass conventional thinking patterns and assumptions. Start by abstracting your problem to its essential structure. What are you really trying to accomplish? What are the key constraints and requirements? What patterns or relationships are involved? Once you understand the problem's fundamental structure, look for similar patterns in nature, other industries, historical events, or completely unrelated fields. For example, if you're trying to improve traffic flow in a building, study how ant colonies manage traffic flow, how computer networks handle data routing, or how rivers distribute water through tributaries. Each domain has evolved elegant solutions to distribution and flow problems that might inspire novel approaches to your architectural challenge. Nature is particularly rich with analogical solutions because evolution has tested countless approaches to common problems over millions of years. Velcro was inspired by burr seeds. Sonar technology came from studying bats, and countless engineering innovations have biological origins. The technique requires intellectual curiosity and willingness to explore outside your normal expertise areas. Read broadly, talk to people from different fields, maintain active interest in how various systems and organizations solve their challenges. Many breakthrough innovations result from analogical thinking. The Wright brothers studied bird flight. Steve Jobs applied calligraphy principles to computer fonts. Countless entrepreneurs have adapted solutions from one industry to create innovations in another. Hack 49. The question ladder technique. For any problem you're trying to solve, systematically ask increasingly deeper why questions to identify root causes, rather than just treating surface symptoms. This technique, based on root cause analysis methodologies used in engineering and business, helps ensure you're solving fundamental issues rather than just addressing their manifestations. Start with your initial problem statement. Then ask, why is this a problem? Take that answer and ask, why does that cause issues? Continue asking, why is that important? Until you reach fundamental causes that can't be broken down further. Typically, 5 to 7 levels of why questions will take you from surface symptoms to root causes. For example, if your problem is I'm always running late, the question ladder might look like, why am I running late? Because I underestimate how long tasks take. Why do I underestimate timing? It's because I plan optimistically without accounting for potential delays. Why don't I account for delays? It's because I want to fit more activities into my schedule than time realistically allows. Why do I overpack my schedule? Because I'm afraid of missing opportunities or disappointing people. This progression reveals that the real problem isn't time management techniques, but underlying anxiety about missing out or disappointing others. Addressing this root cause through boundary setting and priority clarification will be more effective than trying various scheduling strategies. The technique prevents the common mistake of implementing solutions that address symptoms while leaving underlying causes unchanged. Many failed improvement efforts result from solving the wrong problems rather than implementing the wrong solutions. Hack 50. The reverse problem solving. Instead of asking, how do I solve this problem? Ask, how could I make this problem significantly worse? Then systematically do the opposite of everything you identify. This reverse thinking approach often reveals solutions that forward thinking misses, because it bypasses mental blocks and conventional assumptions. Reverse problem solving works because it's often easier to imagine how things can go wrong than how they can go right. Your brain has sophisticated threat detection systems that excel at identifying potential problems, dangers, and failure modes. This negativity bias, while sometimes problematic in daily life, becomes a powerful tool when deliberately applied to problem solving. The technique also helps overcome functional fixedness, the tendency to see objects, processes, or approaches only in their conventional uses. When you're trying to make something worse, you naturally think about unconventional applications and unexpected consequences, which can reveal novel solution approaches. For example, if you're struggling to improve team communication, ask, how could I make communication much worse? You might identify having meetings without agendas, never following up on decisions, using confusing jargon, interrupting people constantly, or making important announcements through unreliable channels. The opposite of each item becomes a specific improvement strategy. Apply this to personal challenges as well. If you want to improve your health habits, consider how you could systematically ruin your health, then do the opposite. If you want better relationships, think about behaviors that reliably damage relationships. Then avoid those while implementing their opposites. The technique is particularly effective for complex, multifaceted problems where traditional solution approaches feel overwhelming or unclear. Breaking down all the ways something could fail often provides a clearer roadmap for success than trying to directly envision perfect outcomes. Hack 51. The outside view technique. When making predictions about your own projects, timelines, or capabilities, deliberately research how long similar projects typically take for other people or organizations. The planning fallacy causes us to be systematically overly optimistic about our own timelines and abilities, while being much more realistic when estimating others' performance. This bias occurs because when planning our own projects, we focus on the specific steps we intend to take and imagine everything going according to plan. We underweight potential obstacles, unexpected complications, and the inevitable small delays that accumulate in any complex endeavor. However, when estimating others' timelines, we naturally consider the general difficulty of similar tasks and account for typical problems. To apply the outside view, research completion times for comparable projects in your field. If you're planning a home renovation, look up average timelines for similar projects rather than just estimating based on your contractor's initial estimate. If you're launching a business, study how long similar startups typically take to reach profitability rather than relying solely on your business plan projections. The technique is particularly valuable for novel projects where you have limited personal experience. When you're doing something for the first time, outside view data provides crucial calibration for your internal estimates, which are likely to be wildly optimistic. Combine outside view research with inside view planning for optimal results. Use outside view data to set realistic overall timelines and budgets. Then use inside view planning to organize specific steps and resource allocation within that realistic framework. Many successful project managers routinely add 25 to 50% buffers to initial estimates based on outside view research. And these projects consistently come in closer to schedule and budget than those based on inside view estimates alone. Hack 52. The base rate neglect counter. Before making any prediction or assessment, actively seek out base rate information, the general frequency or probability of similar events in comparable situations. People naturally focus on specific details of their particular situation, while ignoring crucial statistical prediction foundation. Base rates answer questions like, what percentage of restaurants succeed in their first year? What's the typical recovery time for this type of injury? How often do people in similar situations achieve this type of goal? What's the historical accuracy rate of this type of prediction or assessment? This information provides essential context for evaluating your specific situation. If 90% of restaurants fail within 5 years, your restaurant faces the same statistical challenges regardless of how confident you feel about your particular concept. If people with your type of injury typically require 6 months of recovery, planning for 3 months is probably unrealistic. The technique is particularly important for low frequency, high-impact decisions where you have limited personal experience, starting a business, making major career changes, undergoing medical procedures, or investing in new opportunities all benefit from base rate research. Base rates don't determine individual outcomes, but they provide crucial calibration for your expectations and planning. You might beat the averages, but you should plan for typical outcomes while hoping for better ones. Many cognitive biases result from focusing too heavily on vivid specific information while ignoring dry statistical data. Base rates provide the statistical foundation that helps counteract these biases and leads to more accurate predictions and better decision-making. Hack 53. The availability bias check. When assessing risks, probabilities, or frequencies, deliberately seek out actual statistical information rather than relying on what examples easily come to mind. The availability heuristic causes us to judge probability based on how easily we can remember relevant examples, which creates systematic distortions because memorable events aren't necessarily frequent events. Media coverage, personal experiences, and vivid stories create skewed perceptions of actual frequencies and risks. Plane crashes receive extensive media coverage while car accidents are rarely reported, leading many people to overestimate flying risks while underestimating driving risks. Similarly, dramatic medical conditions receive more attention than common health problems, distorting perceptions of comparative risk. Before making decisions based on risk assessment, look up actual statistics from reliable sources. Government agencies, academic research, and professional organizations often provide accurate frequency data that contradicts intuitive impressions based on available examples. The bias affects many domains beyond risk assessment. People overestimate the frequency of dramatic events like natural disasters, violent crimes, or lottery winnings, while underestimating mundane but common events like heart disease, household accidents, or gradual career advancement. Develop habits of statistical curiosity. When you notice yourself making probability judgments based on memorable examples, pause and ask whether you actually know the relevant base rates. This small pause often reveals that your intuitive estimates are significantly off from actual frequencies. The availability bias check is particularly important for financial decisions, health choices, career planning, and parenting decisions, where accurate risk assessment significantly impacts outcomes and well-being. Hack 54. The Anchoring Adjustment Protocol. When you receive any initial number, estimate, or proposal, deliberately consider what the value might be if that initial anchor were completely wrong. Anchoring bias causes people to make insufficient adjustments from initial reference points, even when those reference points are obviously arbitrary or unreliable. Real estate agents use anchoring strategically by showing overpriced properties first, which makes subsequent properties seem more reasonable by comparison. Salary negotiations often begin with initial offers that anchor subsequent discussions. Even random numbers can influence estimates if they're presented before judgment tasks. To counteract anchoring effects, create systematic adjustment protocols. When someone gives you an estimate, ask yourself what the number might be if their estimate were 50% too high or 50% too low. When evaluating prices, research comparable options before making judgments about value. The technique is particularly important for financial decisions where anchoring can cost significant money. Home purchases, salary negotiations, investment valuations, and business deals all involve anchoring effects that can lead to poor economic outcomes if not recognized and countered. Practice conscious adjustment by generating multiple reference points rather than relying on single anchors. If someone says a project will take 3 months, consider what it would take if similar projects typically require 2 months or 6 months. This range-based thinking helps counteract the magnetic pull of single anchor points. Develop awareness of your own anchoring susceptibility by tracking situations where initial numbers influenced your subsequent judgments. Most people discover they're more susceptible to anchoring than they initially believed. Hack 55. The Confirmation Bias Antidote for Important Beliefs. Decisions or conclusions. Actively seek out credible sources that disagree with your current position. Set a specific goal to find the strongest possible arguments against your view before finalizing your position. This intellectual humility practice often leads to more nuanced, accurate, and defensible conclusions. Confirmation bias causes people to search for, interpret, and remember information in ways that confirm their existing beliefs while avoiding or dismissing contradictory evidence. This bias is so strong that people often strengthen their original beliefs when presented with disconfirming evidence. Through a process called belief perseverance, create structured devil's advocate research where you spend equal time seeking, supporting, and contradicting evidence for important positions. Read publications that disagree with your political views. Seek out customer complaints about products you're considering purchasing. And interview people who chose different career paths than you're considering. The goal isn't changing your mind about everything, but ensuring your final positions are based on comprehensive information rather than selective evidence gathering. Sometimes you'll discover your original position was correct, but for different reasons than you initially thought. Other times, you'll modify your views based on new information. This technique is particularly important for consequential decisions about investments, career choices, political positions, health treatments, and relationship judgments where being wrong has significant costs. The practice requires emotional maturity because it means seeking information that might prove you wrong or require admitting mistakes. However, people who regularly practice confirmation bias correction make more accurate judgments and avoid costly errors that result from information bubbles. Hack 56. The Decision Batching Strategy. Group similar decisions together and make them all during periods when your mental energy is high, rather than spreading decision-making throughout the day when your cognitive resources become depleted. Decision fatigue research shows that decision quality deteriorates as mental energy decreases, leading to poor choices or decision avoidance later in the day. Steve Jobs famously wore nearly identical outfits daily to preserve mental energy for more important choices. This might seem extreme, but the principle applies broadly. The more routine decisions you can automate or batch, the more cognitive resources remain available for decisions that truly matter. Create decision-making sessions where you handle multiple similar choices efficiently. Spend 30 minutes planning meals for the entire week rather than deciding what to eat 3 times daily. Batch clothing decisions by laying out outfits for several days at once. Group financial decisions like bill paying, investment adjustments, and budget reviews into single, focused sessions. The technique works because decision-making uses glucose and depletes mental energy, just like physical exercise depletes physical energy. By concentrating decision-making into shorter periods, you can operate at peak decision quality, while leaving extended periods free from choice-related mental drain. Schedule decision batching during your natural high-energy periods, typically earlier in the day for most people. Avoid making important decisions late in the day or when you're tired, stressed, or hungry, as these conditions significantly impair judgment quality. Track which types of decisions drain your energy most severely and prioritize batching those. Some people find social decisions, what events to attend, how to respond to invitations, particularly depleting, while others struggle more with work-related choices or consumer decisions. Hack 57. The energy management timing. Align your most important decisions with periods of peak mental energy, typically earlier in the day before decision fatigue, stress, and physical tiredness accumulate. Save routine or low-stakes decisions for later when your cognitive capacity is reduced but adequate for simpler choices. Research consistently shows that decision quality follows predictable daily patterns. Judges make harsher sentencing decisions later in the day. Doctors prescribe more unnecessary antibiotics when tired. And consumer choices become more impulsive as mental energy depletes. Understanding these patterns allows you to schedule decisions strategically for optimal outcomes. Create a decision hierarchy that categorizes choices by importance and complexity. Major life decisions, significant financial choices, important relationship discussions, and complex work problems should be scheduled during peak energy periods. Routine decisions about meals, entertainment, scheduling, and minor purchases can be handled when energy is lower. Pay attention to your personal energy patterns because individual differences are significant. Some people maintain good decision-making capacity throughout the day, while others experience dramatic declines after lunch. Track your own patterns and schedule accordingly. Consider the energy cost of different types of decisions. Social decisions often require different mental resources than analytical decisions. Creative choices draw on different cognitive systems than logical problem solving. Understanding which types of decisions are most depleting for you personally helps optimize your scheduling. The technique also applies to important conversations and negotiations. Schedule difficult discussions, performance reviews, and significant negotiations during periods when both parties are likely to have peak mental energy and emotional regulation capacity. Hack 58. The options limitation principle. Deliberately limit the number of alternatives you consider for any decision to prevent choice overload and decision paralysis. Research by psychologist Barry Schwartz demonstrates that while some choice is essential for well-being, too many options often lead to worse decisions, decreased satisfaction, and increased regret. The paradox of choice occurs because evaluating numerous options requires significant mental energy, creates anxiety about making suboptimal choices, and increases opportunity cost awareness, focusing on what you're giving up rather than what you're gaining. People faced with extensive options often defer decisions, make worse choices, or feel less satisfied with good choices because they imagine unchosen alternatives might have been better. Set specific limits for different types of decisions. For restaurant choices, consider only 3 options. For job applications, research 5 positions thoroughly rather than applying broadly to dozens. For major purchases, evaluate 3 to 5 alternatives rather than exhaustively researching every available option. The optimal number of options varies by decision, importance, and personal preference. But research suggests that 3 to 5 alternatives often provide the best balance between having adequate choice and avoiding choice overload. More options can be beneficial for very important decisions, but most daily choices don't justify extensive option evaluation. Use systematic criteria to narrow down options before detailed evaluation. Define your most important requirements first, then eliminate alternatives that don't meet those criteria before comparing remaining options in detail. This principle is particularly valuable for people who naturally tend toward extensive research and analysis. While thorough evaluation can improve decision quality, it also has diminishing returns and can become counterproductive. When option evaluation costs exceed the benefits of marginally better choices. Hack 59. The predetermined decision framework. For recurring decisions that don't require fresh analysis each time, create predetermined rules or criteria that automate the choice process. This eliminates the need for repeated deliberation, while ensuring consistency with your values and goals. Examples include automatic savings transfers that eliminate monthly decisions about how much to save, exercise schedules that remove daily decisions about when to work out, or criteria for accepting social invitations that eliminate case-by-case deliberation about social commitments. The framework works by transforming decisions into rule following, which requires much less mental energy than repeated choice evaluation. Once you've thoughtfully established criteria during a high-energy period, you can apply those criteria automatically without depleting decision-making capacity. Create frameworks for your most frequent decision types. If you often struggle with food choices, establish eating guidelines based on your health and preference goals. If you're frequently invited to social events, create criteria for automatic acceptance, close friends. Networking opportunities, new experiences versus automatic decline conflicts with priorities. Energy-draining events, overcommitment periods. The key is developing frameworks during calm, rational periods when you can think clearly about your values and long-term goals. Then trusting those frameworks during busy or stressful periods when decision quality might be compromised. Review and update your frameworks periodically as your life circumstances, goals, and preferences change. What worked during one life phase might need adjustment as your situation evolves. Hack 60. The Sleep on It strategy. For important, non-urgent decisions, deliberately wait at least one night before finalizing your choice. Sleep consolidates memory, processes emotions, and often provides new perspectives on complex decisions through both REM, sleep processing, and the temporal distance that allows emotional intensity to subside. During sleep, your brain continues processing information from the day and making connections between different pieces of knowledge stored in memory. This unconscious processing can reveal considerations or solutions that weren't apparent during conscious deliberation. Many people report waking up with clarity about decisions that seemed difficult the previous day. The temporal delay also allows initial emotional reactions to subside, revealing whether your decision preferences remain stable across different emotional states. Decisions made during high emotion often seem less optimal once emotional intensity decreases. Use the sleep period strategically by reviewing relevant information before bed, which can enhance overnight processing. Your brain pays particular attention to information encountered shortly before sleep, making this an optimal time for final consideration of important decision factors. The technique doesn't require literal overnight waiting. Any significant time delay that allows emotional and cognitive state changes can provide similar benefits. However, overnight delays are particularly effective because sleep provides unique information processing that doesn't occur during wake states. Be careful not to use this strategy as indefinite procrastination. Set specific deadlines for decision completion and use the sleep period for final consideration rather than indefinite delay. Hack 61. The Tiny Habits Method Start. any new habit with the smallest possible version that you can perform consistently regardless of motivation, energy level, or circumstances. Want to exercise regularly? Begin with 1 push-up per day. Want to develop a meditation practice? Start with 1 conscious breath. Want to read more? Commit to reading 1 sentence daily. This approach, developed by Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg, works because tiny habits bypass the resistance that kills most behavior change attempts. When a habit is so small that it requires minimal motivation and virtually no time, you can maintain it even during busy, stressful, or low-energy periods. Tiny habits create success momentum that naturally leads to expansion. After you've performed 1 push-up daily for 2 weeks, doing 5 push-ups feels easy by comparison. After 1 conscious breath becomes automatic, extending to 5 minutes of meditation seems achievable rather than overwhelming. The method leverages what psychologists call the success spiral. Small wins create positive emotions that increase motivation and confidence for slightly larger challenges. Each successful completion reinforces your identity as someone who follows through on commitments, making future habit performance more likely. Focus on consistency over intensity during the initial habit formation period. It's better to do 1 push-up every day for a month than to do 50 push-ups once per week. The goal is creating automatic behavior patterns that don't depend on motivation or willpower. Research shows that tiny habits often expand naturally without conscious effort once the basic pattern becomes automatic. Many people discover that their 1 push-up habit naturally becomes 10 or 20 push-ups as the behavior becomes established and enjoyable. Hack 62. The habit stacking technique. Attach new habits to existing strong habits using the specific formula. After I existing habit, I will new habit. This technique leverages existing neural pathways and behavioral momentum to support new behavior development, without requiring additional willpower or memory. Choose existing habits that are already automatic and performed consistently. These might include brushing your teeth, drinking your first cup of coffee, sitting down at your desk, getting into your car, or turning off lights before bed. The existing habit serves as a trigger and provides behavioral momentum for the new habit. Examples of effective habit stacks include: after I pour my morning coffee, I will write 1 sentence in my journal. After I sit down at my desk, I will review my 3 most important tasks for the day. After I brush my teeth at night, I will lay out my clothes for tomorrow. The technique works because habits are neurological loops consisting of cue, routine, and reward. By using an established routine as the cue for a new routine, you're building onto existing neural pathways rather than trying to create entirely new ones from scratch. Be specific about the timing and location of your habit stack. After I finish eating breakfast at my kitchen table. It's more effective than after breakfast because it provides clearer environmental and contextual cues that support automatic behavior. Start with just 1 new habit attached to 1 existing habit. Once that connection becomes automatic, typically 2 to 8 weeks depending on complexity, you can add additional habits to the same stack or create new stacks with different existing habits. Hack 63. The implementation intention specificity. Transform vague behavioral goals into specific if-then plans that specify exactly when, where, and how you will perform desired behaviors. Research by Peter Galwitzer shows that people with specific implementation intentions are 2 to 3 times more likely to follow through on their goals compared to those who rely on general good intentions alone. Instead of "I will exercise more," create specific plans. If it's 7 a.m. on a weekday, then I will put on my running shoes and go for a 15-minute walk around my neighborhood. Instead of "I'll eat healthier," specify. If I'm preparing lunch, then I will include at least 1 serving of vegetables and choose water instead of sugary drinks. The specificity serves multiple psychological functions. It eliminates decision-making in the moment by pre-planning your response to anticipated situations. It creates clear behavioral triggers that prompt action automatically. It reduces the mental effort required to initiate good behaviors because you don't have to figure out what to do each time. Implementation intentions work best when they address your specific challenge patterns. If you struggle with evening procrastination, create evening-specific plans. If mornings are difficult, focus on morning behavioral automation. If social situations trigger problematic behaviors, create social-specific implementation intentions. The technique is particularly powerful for behaviors you want to perform regularly, but often forget or postpone. Exercise, healthy eating, creative work, relationship maintenance, and skill development all benefit from implementation intention specificity. Make your plans realistic and achievable given your actual lifestyle constraints. Overly ambitious implementation intentions often fail because they don't account for real-world variability in energy, schedule, and circumstances. Hack 64. The Environment Design Principle. Modify your physical and social environment to make good behaviors easier and bad behaviors harder. Rather than relying solely on willpower and motivation to drive behavior change, environmental design often works better than personal discipline because it doesn't deplete mental energy and operates automatically regardless of your mood or motivation level. For nutrition goals, place healthy snacks at eye level in your refrigerator and pantry, while hiding less healthy options in harder-to-reach locations. Keep fruits and vegetables visible on counters while storing processed foods in opaque containers. This takes advantage of the fact that convenience and visibility strongly influence food choices. For exercise habits, lay out workout clothes the night before. Keep exercise equipment visible and easily accessible, and remove barriers like having to search for equipment or clear space for workouts. The goal is reducing the activation energy required to begin good behaviors. For productivity goals, organize your workspace to minimize distractions and optimize focus. Remove non-essential items from your desk, position yourself away from high-traffic areas, and keep important work materials easily accessible. The principle extends to social environment design. Surround yourself with people who model the behaviors you want to develop and avoid, or limit time with people who encourage behaviors you're trying to change. Social influence operates largely outside conscious awareness, but has powerful effects on behavior patterns. Technology environment design is increasingly important. Use apps that block distracting websites during work hours. Organize your phone's home screen to promote good habits while hiding problematic apps. And set up automatic systems for savings, bill paying, and other positive financial behaviors. Hack 65. The Keystone Habit Strategy. Focus your habit development efforts on one habit that naturally triggers positive changes across multiple areas of your life, rather than trying to improve everything simultaneously. Charles Duhigg's research on keystone habits shows that certain behaviors create cascading positive effects that transform entire lifestyle patterns. Exercise is a common keystone habit because it often leads to improved eating choices, better sleep quality, increased energy for other activities, enhanced mood, and greater sense of personal efficacy. People who establish regular exercise routines frequently report improvements in areas they weren't directly trying to change. Morning routines can serve as keystone habits by setting positive momentum for entire days. A structured morning that includes elements like exercise, meditation, planning, or creative work often improves performance and mood throughout subsequent hours. Other potential keystone habits include regular meal planning, which can improve nutrition, reduce stress, and save money. Consistent sleep schedules, which affect energy, mood, and decision-making. Daily learning habits, which can boost career prospects and personal satisfaction, or regular social connection practices. Identify potential keystone habits by considering which single behavior change would have the most positive ripple effects across your life. Look for habits that align with your core values, support multiple goals simultaneously, and feel naturally energizing rather than depleting. The strategy is particularly effective because it concentrates your limited willpower and attention on one change that generates multiple benefits. Rather than dispersing effort across numerous independent habit attempts, that might overwhelm your capacity for behavior change. Hack 66. The Ego Depletion Recovery Protocol when your willpower feels depleted and self-control becomes difficult. Use specific strategies to restore mental energy for better decision-making and behavior regulation. While the exact mechanisms of ego depletion are still debated in psychology, practical strategies for restoring self-control capacity are well established. Consume a small amount of glucose when you feel mentally drained. Your brain uses glucose for energy, and depleted glucose levels can impair self-control. A piece of fruit, small amount of natural juice, or even glucose tablets can restore decision-making capacity within 10 to 15 minutes. Avoid large amounts of sugar that cause energy crashes. Take brief naps when possible. Even 10 to 20-minute naps can significantly restore mental energy and self-control capacity. Napping provides the brain with opportunity for metabolic recovery and can reset attention and decision-making systems. Practice brief mindfulness exercises. 3 to 5 minutes of focused breathing or body awareness can restore mental clarity and emotional regulation capacity. These micro-meditations help reset your nervous system and provide temporary relief from mental fatigue. Engage in light physical activity. A brief walk, some gentle stretching, or simple movements can improve mood and restore mental energy through increased blood flow and neurotransmitter activation. The key is recognizing early signs of willpower depletion, increased irritability, difficulty concentrating, impulsive decisions, or reduced motivation, and taking proactive recovery steps rather than pushing through until complete exhaustion occurs. Build regular recovery periods into your schedule rather than waiting until depletion becomes severe. This preventive approach maintains more consistent self-control capacity throughout the day. Hack 67. The Temptation Bundling Strategy. Pair activities you should do but often avoid with activities you naturally want to do, creating behavioral combinations that make necessary but unpleasant tasks more appealing. This technique, developed by behavioral economist Catherine Milkman, harnesses the motivational power of immediately rewarding activities to fuel less, immediately gratifying but important behaviors. Examples include only watching your favorite shows while exercising, only listening to special podcasts while doing household chores, only allowing yourself social media time while walking, or only enjoying certain treats while working on challenging projects. The strategy works because it transforms the reward structure of necessary but unrewarding tasks. Instead of exercise being something you endure to get health benefits later, becomes the gateway to immediate entertainment enjoyment. Instead of housework being purely tedious, it becomes associated with engaging audio content. Choose bundled activities carefully to ensure they're compatible. The enjoyable activity shouldn't interfere with proper performance of the necessary activity. Light entertainment works well with repetitive physical tasks, but complex mental content might distract from activities requiring concentration or safety attention. Create bundles that feel genuinely rewarding rather than forced. If you don't actually enjoy your chosen reward activity, the bundling strategy won't provide motivational benefits. The goal is creating positive associations with necessary behaviors, not adding additional unpleasant requirements. Start with small bundles and short durations to establish the association before expanding to longer periods. Many people find that successful bundling eventually makes the necessary activity intrinsically more enjoyable, even when performed without the bundled reward. Hack 68. The Fresh Start Effect. Begin new habits or attempt to break old ones at natural transition points like Mondays, the first of the month, birthdays, moving to new locations, starting new jobs, or seasonal changes. These temporal landmarks create psychological sense of new beginnings that enhances motivation and reduces the mental weight of past failures. The fresh start effect works because temporal landmarks help people feel disconnected from past failures and more optimistic about future success. When starting a new exercise routine on January 1st, you're not just someone who has failed at exercise before, you're someone making a fresh start in a new year. Research shows that people are significantly more likely to pursue goal-related behaviors immediately following temporal landmarks compared to arbitrary dates. Gym attendance spikes after New Year's Day, Mondays, and birthdays. Google searches for diet information peak at temporal landmarks rather than random dates. You can create artificial fresh start effects by establishing personal temporal landmarks. Designate specific dates as your personal new beginnings for different goals. Many successful people use quarterly reviews and goal-setting sessions that create regular fresh start opportunities. The technique is particularly effective for habits you've attempted before without success. Instead of viewing new attempts as evidence of previous failures, temporal landmarks help frame them as genuinely new efforts with fresh potential for success. Combine fresh start timing with other behavior change techniques for maximum effectiveness. Use fresh start dates to implement tiny habits, establish new environment designs, or begin habit stacking approaches. Hack 69. The mental contrasting technique. Visualize your desired outcome clearly and in detail. Then honestly consider and visualize the specific obstacles that might prevent you from achieving that outcome. This combination of positive visualization with realistic obstacle identification improves follow-through and goal achievement compared to positive thinking alone. Mental contrasting works because it combines the motivational benefits of positive visualization with the practical benefits of obstacle preparation. Purely positive visualization can actually reduce effort by creating premature satisfaction, while purely negative thinking about obstacles can reduce motivation. The combination provides both inspiration and preparation. Start by spending several minutes vividly imagining successful achievement of your goal. What will it feel like? What will you see, hear, and experience? How will success change your daily life? Make this visualization as detailed and emotionally engaging as possible. Then shift to realistic consideration of internal and external obstacles. What personal habits, skills, or motivational challenges might interfere with success? What external circumstances, resource limitations, or competing priorities could derail your efforts? Don't catastrophize, but honestly assess likely challenges. For each obstacle you identify, develop specific if-then plans for addressing it. If motivation wanes, then you'll use your predetermined motivational strategies. If time becomes scarce, then you'll implement your efficiency protocols. If social pressure creates problems, then you'll use your prepared responses. Research by Gabrielle Oettingen shows that people who use mental contrasting achieve significantly better outcomes than those who use either positive visualization alone or problem-focused thinking alone. The technique provides both inspirational pull toward goals and practical preparation for inevitable challenges. Hack 70. The Value Affirmation Method. When facing temptation to break good habits or engage in behaviors that conflict with your long-term goals, consciously remind yourself of your core values and how your intended behavior aligns with those values. This technique strengthens your sense of identity and makes it easier to choose long-term benefits over short-term pleasures. Values-based decision-making works because it connects immediate choices to your deeper sense of identity and purpose. When you're tempted to skip exercise, instead of focusing on the immediate discomfort of working out, remind yourself that exercise expresses your values of health, discipline, and self-care. Identify your core values clearly during calm periods when you're not facing immediate temptation. What principles do you want to guide your life? What kind of person do you want to be? How do you want others to remember you? Common core values include health, family, creativity, learning, service, integrity, and personal growth. Create specific connections between your challenging habits and your core values. If eating well supports your value of being a good parent by modeling healthy behavior for your children, mind yourself of this connection when facing food temptations. If saving money aligns with your value of financial security for your family, use this connection to resist impulse purchases. The technique is most effective when your values are genuinely personal and meaningful, rather than imposed by external expectations. Socially expected values that don't resonate personally provide weak motivation compared to authentic personal values that reflect your true priorities. Practice value affirmation during non-tempting periods to strengthen these connections before you need them. Many people find that regular reflection on values and their behavioral connections makes value-based decision-making more automatic during challenging moments. Hack 71. The Progress Measurement System. Track your progress visually using charts, APPs, simple checkmarks, or other concrete measurement systems. The mere act of monitoring behavior increases the likelihood of continuing that behavior through increased awareness, accountability, and motivation from visible progress accumulation. Choose measurement systems that are simple enough to maintain consistently without becoming burdensome. Complex tracking systems that require significant time or effort often get abandoned, defeating their purpose. Simple systems that take less than 30 seconds daily are much more sustainable. Visual progress tracking works because it makes abstract improvements concrete and visible. Seeing a chain of check marks representing daily exercise or a graph showing gradual skill improvement provides tangible evidence of your efforts and progress that memory alone doesn't capture effectively. The system also creates positive feedback loops. Each day you successfully perform your desired behavior, you get the immediate reward of marking progress, which releases small amounts of dopamine and reinforces the behavior pattern. This immediate gratification helps sustain motivation during periods when long-term benefits aren't yet visible. Choose metrics that reflect true progress rather than vanity metrics that look impressive but don't represent meaningful advancement. For fitness goals, consistency of exercise might be more important than weight changes. For learning goals, time spent practicing might be more valuable than completion of specific materials. Review your progress regularly, weekly or monthly, to celebrate achievements and adjust strategies if needed. Progress reviews help maintain long-term perspective and prevent temporary setbacks from derailing overall momentum. Hack 72. The Social Accountability Leverage. Share your goals and progress with others and explicitly ask them to check on your advancement. Social pressure and support significantly improve goal achievement rates because humans have strong psychological drives to maintain consistency with public commitments and meet others' expectations. Choose accountability partners who will be supportive but honest about your progress. The ideal accountability partner cares about your success but isn't so emotionally invested that they'll avoid giving you honest feedback when you're not following through on commitments. Create specific accountability structures rather than just mentioning goals casually. Set regular check-in dates, define what information you'll share, and establish what type of feedback you want from your accountability partner. Some people respond well to gentle encouragement. Others need direct challenges when they're not meeting commitments. The technique works through multiple psychological mechanisms. Public commitment increases internal motivation because humans have strong drives to maintain consistency between public statements and private actions. Social support provides encouragement during difficult periods. External monitoring increases awareness of your own behavior patterns. Consider different types of social accountability for different goals. Professional development goals might benefit from accountability with colleagues or mentors. Health goals might work better with friends or family members. Financial goals could involve accountability partners who share similar financial situations and challenges. Be careful to choose accountability relationships that feel supportive rather than judgmental. The goal is increasing success rates, not creating additional stress or shame around goal pursuit. Hack 73. The Minimum Viable Progress Principle. On days when motivation is low, energy is depleted, or circumstances are challenging, commit to performing the absolute minimum version of your important habits, rather than skipping them entirely. Maintaining consistency is more important than intensity for long-term habit formation and goal achievement. Instead of your usual 45-minute workout, do 5 minutes of movement. Instead of reading an entire chapter, read 1 page. Instead of writing 500 words, write 1 sentence. Instead of meditating for 20 minutes, take 3 conscious breaths. This approach prevents the all-or-nothing thinking that often derails habit formation. Many people abandon habits entirely when they can't perform them at their usual intensity. But research shows that maintaining any level of the behavior preserves habit strength and makes returning to full intensity much easier. Minimum viable progress also provides psychological momentum during difficult periods. Completing even small versions of important habits maintains your identity as someone who follows through on commitments and preserves the neural pathways associated with the behavior pattern. The technique is particularly valuable during stressful life periods when maintaining elaborate routines becomes impossible. Life transitions, work deadlines, family emergencies, or health challenges can disrupt normal habits, but minimum viable versions can often be maintained even during chaos. Define your minimum viable progress levels in advance before you need them. When you're motivated and energetic, it's easier to think rationally about what minimum performance would look like compared to when you're tired and tempted to skip entirely. Many people discover that starting with minimum viable progress often leads naturally to doing more than planned once they overcome the initial resistance to beginning. The hardest part is often getting started, not continuing once you've begun. The approach also helps distinguish between genuine obstacles and motivational resistance. If you can't even manage minimum viable progress, you might need to address underlying issues like illness, overcommitment, or unrealistic expectations rather than pushing harder with willpower. Hack 74. The identity-based habit formation. Focus on becoming the type of person who naturally performs desired behaviors, rather than just trying to achieve specific outcomes. Instead of "I want to write a book," adopt the identity "I am a writer who writes daily." Instead of "I want to get in shape," become "I am someone who prioritizes fitness and takes care of my body." Identity-based habit formation works because behavior change is easier when it aligns with self-concept rather than conflicts with it. When you see yourself as a writer, writing feels natural and consistent with who you are. When you see yourself as someone who doesn't exercise, working out feels forced and artificial. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Each time you write, even for 5 minutes, you're reinforcing your identity as a writer. Each time you choose healthy food, you're strengthening your identity as someone who takes care of their health. Start with small identity-consistent actions that feel achievable and authentic. You don't need to transform your entire self-concept overnight. Identity change happens gradually through accumulated evidence of new behavior patterns. Use identity-based language when talking about your goals, both internally and with others. Instead of "I'm trying to quit smoking," say "I'm becoming someone who doesn't smoke." Instead of "I'm working on being more organized," say "I'm developing my natural organizational abilities." The technique is particularly powerful for habits that feel inconsistent with your current self-image. If you've always seen yourself as not a morning person, focus on gradually becoming someone who appreciates early mornings rather than just trying to wake up earlier. Identity changes often happen faster than people expect when supported by consistent small actions that align with the desired identity. Hack 75. The habit maintenance scheduling. Treat your important habits as seriously as important appointments by scheduling specific times and locations for them. Then protecting that time as you would protect meeting times with important people. When habits are tied to specific temporal and spatial cues, they become automatic more quickly and are much less likely to be skipped or postponed. Choose consistent times that align with your natural energy patterns and existing schedule constraints. If you're naturally energetic in the morning, schedule challenging habits like exercise or creative work early in the day. If evenings work better for your lifestyle, establish consistent evening habit times. The scheduling specificity serves multiple functions. It eliminates daily decision-making about when to perform the habit. It creates environmental and temporal cues that trigger automatic behavior. It prevents other activities from gradually crowding out habit time. Block the time on your calendar just as you would for important meetings and treat habit time as non-negotiable except for genuine emergencies. This mental framework elevates habit importance and helps resist the tendency to postpone habits when other demands arise. Consider the domino effects of habit scheduling on the rest of your day. Morning habits affect energy and mood for subsequent hours. Evening habits influence sleep quality and next day preparation. Choose scheduling that supports rather than conflicts with your other important activities. If you miss your scheduled habit time, have predetermined makeup protocols rather than just skipping entirely. This might mean doing a shortened version later in the day or having alternative time slots available for habit performance. Hack 76. The cue identification strategy systematically identifies the specific environmental, state, emotional, social, and temporal triggers that prompt unwanted behaviors. Bad habits follow predictable cue reward patterns, and changing them requires understanding what initiates the unwanted routine in the first place. Keep a habit tracking journal for 1 week without trying to change the behavior. Just record when the unwanted behavior occurs. What happened immediately before it, where you were, who you were with, what you were feeling, and what time of day it was. Look for patterns in these triggers. Common cue categories include environmental triggers, seeing certain objects or being in specific locations. Emotional triggers, stress, boredom, anxiety, excitement. Social triggers, being with certain people or in particular social situations. And temporal triggers, specific times of day or days of the week. Once you've identified your personal cue patterns, you can address them through cue avoidance, removing triggers from your environment. Cue modification, changing environmental factors that lead to triggers. Or cue substitution, replacing problematic routines with positive alternatives when triggers occur. Environmental cues are often the easiest to modify. Seeing junk food triggers overeating, remove it from visible locations. If your phone triggers mindless scrolling, keep it in another room during focused work time. If certain locations are associated with problematic behaviors, avoid those locations when possible. Emotional and social cues require more complex strategies, but are equally important to address. If stress triggers problematic behaviors, develop alternative stress management techniques. If certain social situations consistently lead to unwanted behaviors, prepare specific strategies for those situations or modify your social environment. Hack 77. The replacement habit protocol. Instead of just trying to eliminate a bad habit, replace it with a positive alternative behavior that satisfies the same underlying psychological need. This approach is more effective than pure elimination because it addresses the root cause that drives the unwanted behavior while providing a healthier outlet for legitimate needs. Identify what need your bad habit satisfies. Stress eating might provide comfort and distraction from difficult emotions. Social media scrolling might satisfy needs for connection and stimulation. Procrastination might provide temporary relief from anxiety about performance. Choose replacement behaviors that satisfy the same underlying need through healthier means. For stress eating, alternatives might include brief walks, deep breathing exercises, calling a friend, or engaging in creative activities. For social media scrolling, alternatives might include reading interesting books, learning new skills, or having real conversations with people. The replacement behavior should be easily accessible when the original cue occurs. If your bad habit typically happens at your desk, your replacement behavior should also be performable at your desk. If the unwanted behavior happens when you're alone, choose replacement activities that don't require other people. Practice the replacement behavior during neutral times when you're not experiencing the original cue, so the new behavior feels familiar and accessible when you need it during challenging moments. Expect that replacement behaviors might feel less immediately satisfying than original habits initially. Most bad habits provide intense short-term satisfaction that healthier alternatives can't match immediately. However, replacement behaviors typically become more satisfying over time as they become associated with positive outcomes. Hack 78. The friction addition method. Make unwanted behaviors more difficult to perform by adding inconvenience, delay, or effort requirements while making desired behaviors easier and more convenient. Small barriers often prevent impulsive actions because most bad habits rely on easy accessibility and minimal thought. For digital habits, log out of problematic social media accounts after each use. Delete apps from your phone, so you must use browsers. Move entertainment apps to less convenient screen locations, or use apps that add delay timers before accessing distracting websites. For consumption habits, store problematic foods in inconvenient locations. Freeze credit cards in blocks of ice to prevent impulse purchases. Keep cigarettes in another room or building, or require additional steps before accessing problematic substances. The key is adding just enough friction to interrupt automatic behavior without making good alternatives impossibly difficult. You want to create a pause that allows conscious decision-making, rather than creating barriers so high that you become frustrated and abandon good intentions entirely. Research shows that even small amounts of added friction can significantly reduce unwanted behaviors. Making cigarettes slightly less convenient can reduce smoking frequency. Adding login requirements to websites reduces casual browsing time. Moving junk food to harder-to-reach locations decreases consumption. Combine friction addition with friction reduction for desired behaviors. As you make bad habits harder, simultaneously make good habits easier through environmental design, preparation, and convenience optimization. Hack 79. The Awareness Enhancement Technique. For the first week of breaking any bad habit, simply track when you perform the unwanted behavior without attempting to change it. This awareness alone often reduces the frequency of automatic behaviors. Because conscious attention disrupts unconscious habit loops. Many habits operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. You might check your phone dozens of times daily, engage in negative self-talk regularly, or make poor food choices automatically without realizing the frequency or patterns of these behaviors. Use a simple tracking method like tally marks on a note card, phone counter apps, or brief journal entries. The goal is increasing awareness rather than creating perfect records. So choose tracking methods that are easy to maintain consistently. Pay attention to patterns without judging yourself. When does the behavior occur most frequently? What triggers seem to prompt it? How do you feel before and after engaging in the behavior? This information provides valuable insights for developing effective change strategies. The awareness phase serves multiple functions. It provides baseline data for measuring improvement. It helps identify specific triggers and patterns that need to be addressed. It often reduces behavior frequency through the simple act of conscious attention. Many people discover that behaviors they thought occurred occasionally actually happen much more frequently than they realized, while other behaviors they worried about are less frequent than they feared. Accurate awareness provides a realistic foundation for behavior change efforts. After the awareness week, use the information you've gathered to implement targeted change strategies based on your specific patterns and triggers rather than generic advice that might not fit your situation. Hack 80. The gradual reduction strategy for addictive or deeply ingrained habits. Reduce gradually rather than attempting complete elimination immediately. This approach is often more sustainable and creates less psychological resistance than abrupt cessation, particularly for habits that have become integrated into your daily routine or emotional regulation system. Gradual reduction works because it allows your brain and body to adjust slowly to decreased stimulation rather than experiencing the shock of sudden deprivation. This is particularly important for habits involving substances that create physical dependence. But the principle also applies to behavioral habits that have become psychologically necessary for comfort or stress management. Create a specific reduction schedule with realistic milestones. If you currently drink 5 cups of coffee daily and want to reduce to 1, you might decrease by 1 cup every 2 weeks rather than cutting immediately to 1 cup. If you spend 3 hours daily on social media and want to reduce to 30 minutes, decrease by 30 minutes weekly. The gradual approach provides multiple opportunities to develop alternative coping strategies and replacement behaviors. As you reduce one habit, you can simultaneously build positive alternatives that address the same underlying needs. Track your progress and celebrate reduction milestones, just as you would celebrate positive habit achievements. Reducing harmful behaviors requires just as much effort and deserves just as much recognition as building beneficial ones. Be prepared for occasional temporary increases during stressful periods, and have plans for returning to your reduction trajectory without abandoning the overall goal. Gradual reduction is rarely perfectly linear. Expect some fluctuation while maintaining overall downward trends. Hack 81. The mirroring effect. Subtly mirror the body language, speech, pace, energy level, and communication style of the person you're interacting with to build unconscious rapport and increase mutual likability. This technique works because humans have evolved powerful systems for social synchronization that operate largely below conscious awareness. Effective mirroring should be subtle and natural rather than obvious mimicry. If someone speaks slowly and thoughtfully, slightly adjust your pace to match theirs. If they use expansive gestures, incorporate more movement into your own communication. If they prefer formal language, avoid casual slang. If they seem high energy, increase your own enthusiasm level appropriately. Research consistently shows that people who are mirrored rate interactions as more positive, feel more understood and connected, and are more likely to comply with requests or agree to proposals. The effect occurs even when people don't consciously notice the mirroring behavior. The technique works because similarity breeds liking, and mirroring creates temporary behavioral similarity that translates into increased affinity. When someone unconsciously recognizes that you're moving and speaking in sync with them, they feel more comfortable and connected without understanding why. Practice mirroring during low-stakes social interactions. First, to develop sensitivity to others' communication styles and comfort with adjusting your own style to match. Pay attention to pace, volume, formality level, energy, and physical positioning. Avoid mirroring negative behaviors or extreme characteristics. If someone seems anxious or agitated, mirror their underlying energy level, but not their specific anxiety behaviors. The goal is creating connection, not amplifying problematic emotional states. Hack 82. The name usage psychology. Use people's names during conversation, but strategically and naturally rather than excessively. Dale Carnegie observed that a person's name is the sweetest sound in any language. To them, because names are intimately connected to personal identity and self-worth. Appropriate name usage activates positive feelings and creates stronger interpersonal connections. The optimal frequency is approximately once every few minutes during conversation, integrated naturally into questions, responses, or transitions. What do you think about that, Jennifer? Or that's an interesting perspective. Mike feels natural, while using names in every sentence seems manipulative and awkward. Name usage is particularly powerful during first meetings because it demonstrates that you're paying attention and consider the person important enough to remember and use their name. This creates positive first impressions that influence all subsequent interactions. The technique works because hearing your name activates brain regions associated with self-referential processing and personal significance. People literally pay more attention when they hear their own names and feel more positively toward people who use their names appropriately. Cultural considerations are important. Some cultures use names more frequently in conversation, while others consider excessive name usage intrusive or overly familiar. Pay attention to social norms in your environment and adjust accordingly. Use names particularly during important moments in conversation. When making requests, sharing important information, expressing appreciation, or during transitions between topics. These strategic moments maximize the positive impact of name usage. Hack 83. The reciprocity principle application. Give genuine value to others before asking for anything in return. Tapping into the powerful psychological principle that people feel obligated to return favors and maintain balanced social exchanges. The key is providing authentic value without creating obvious expectations for immediate reciprocation. Reciprocity works because humans evolved in small social groups where mutual aid and fair exchange were essential for survival. These psychological systems remain active in modern environments and create strong motivation to return favors and maintain social balance. The value you provide should be genuinely useful to the recipient rather than just convenient for you to give. Small but thoughtful gestures often work better than expensive but impersonal gifts. Sharing useful information, making helpful introductions, offering specific assistance, or providing emotional support during difficult times all create reciprocity motivation. Timing is crucial. The reciprocity effect is strongest when there's some temporal distance between giving and asking. Immediate requests after providing value can seem manipulative and reduce the positive feelings associated with receiving help. The technique is most effective when your giving feels genuine and unconditional rather than calculated. People have sophisticated social radar for detecting manipulative behavior. And insincere reciprocity attempts often backfire by creating negative impressions. Focus on building long-term relationships through consistent, helpful behavior, rather than using reciprocity as a short-term influence tactic. People who naturally look for opportunities to help others tend to receive more help and cooperation throughout their lives. Hack 84. The foot in the door technique. Start with small, reasonable requests before making larger ones. People who agree to small favors become much more likely to agree to bigger requests later because they need to maintain consistency with their previous helpful actions and their developing self-perception as someone who assists others. The technique works through commitment and consistency principles. When someone agrees to help you with a small request, they unconsciously categorize themselves as the type of person who helps you or supports your goals. This identity shift makes them more receptive to future requests that align with this helpful identity. Choose initial requests that are genuinely small and easy to fulfill, asking for brief information, small favors that require minimal effort, or simple expressions of support. The initial request should feel so reasonable that most people would naturally agree without feeling burdened or manipulated. The progression from small to large requests should feel natural and logical rather than obviously manipulative. Each subsequent request should be somewhat larger than the previous one, but still feel reasonable given the established helping relationship. Research shows the technique is most effective when there's some time delay between requests, allowing the person to internalize their helpful identity before facing the larger request. Immediate escalation to big requests often fails because identity change needs time to solidify. The approach should be used ethically to create mutually beneficial relationships, rather than to exploit other psychology for purely selfish gain. The best applications help others feel good about their helpful nature while achieving legitimate goals. Hack 85. The social proof leverage. When trying to influence behavior, mention what similar people are already doing, rather than just explaining why the behavior is beneficial. Social proof statements, like most of our customers, choose this option. Or people in your situation typically find this approach helpful work because humans use social information to guide their own behavior, especially in uncertain situations. Social proof works because following the crowd often led to survival advantages throughout human evolution. If most people in your tribe were avoiding certain areas, eating specific foods, or behaving in particular ways, copying their behavior was usually safer than experimenting independently. The technique is most effective when the social proof comes from people who are similar to your target audience. Most college students works better with college students than most people. Other parents influences parents more than other adults. The more similar the reference group, the stronger the social proof effect. Provide specific rather than vague social proof when possible. 73% of people who tried this approach reported positive results. Is more convincing than many people find this helpful. Numbers and specifics feel more credible and create stronger influence than general statements. Be honest about your social proof claims. because false social proof backfires dramatically when discovered and damages trust permanently. Accurate social proof builds confidence and helps people feel they're making socially acceptable choices. The technique is particularly effective for encouraging new behaviors that people are uncertain about. When people don't know what's normal or appropriate in a situation, they rely heavily on social information to guide their choices. Hack 86. The active listening formula. Use the SOLAR method combined with reflective listening to demonstrate genuine engagement and understanding during conversations. CLER stands for sit forward or face the person directly. Maintain open posture without crossed arms or defensive positioning. Lean in slightly to show interest. Maintain appropriate eye contact and relax your body to appear approachable rather than tense. These physical behaviors communicate attention and interest even before you speak. Research in nonverbal communication shows that body language often carries more weight than words in determining how others perceive your engagement and sincerity. Combine SOLAR positioning with reflective listening, paraphrasing what you heard before, responding with your own thoughts. It sounds like you're saying that the main challenge is timing, not budget. Is that correct? This technique ensures you've understood correctly while demonstrating that you're genuinely listening rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. Reflective listening serves multiple functions. It prevents misunderstandings that arise from assumptions about what others mean. It shows respect for the speaker's perspective. It slows down conversation pace, which often leads to deeper and more thoughtful exchanges. Avoid immediate problem solving or advice giving unless specifically requested. Many people want to feel heard and understood before they're ready to consider solutions. Premature advice often signals that you're more interested in demonstrating your knowledge than understanding their situation. The technique is particularly valuable during emotional conversations, conflict resolution, and any situation where understanding others' perspectives is crucial for positive outcomes. Hack 87. The emotional labeling technique. Help others identify and name their emotions by offering tentative labels for what you observe. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated about this situation, or I sense some excitement about this opportunity. Emotional labeling activates the prefrontal cortex and reduces emotional intensity while demonstrating empathy and emotional intelligence. The technique works through affect labeling, the process of putting feelings into words, which literally changes brain activity. When emotions are named, activity shifts from the emotionally reactive amygdala to the more rational prefrontal cortex, helping people think more clearly about their situations. Use tentative language like it seems like, or I'm sensing that, rather than definitive statements like you are angry. This approach offers emotional insight while giving people the opportunity to correct or refine your perception of their emotional state. Focus on basic emotions initially: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, excitement, frustration, before moving to more complex emotional labels. Most people can easily recognize and confirm basic emotions, while complex emotional vocabulary might feel presumptuous or inaccurate. The technique demonstrates emotional intelligence and creates safer spaces for emotional expression. When people feel that their emotions are recognized and accepted, they're more likely to share honestly and work collaboratively toward solutions. Practice emotional labeling with yourself first to develop emotional vocabulary and awareness. The better you become at recognizing and naming your own emotions, the more skilled you'll become at helping others identify theirs. Hack 88. The vulnerability loop strategy. Share appropriate personal information when others share with you, creating positive cycles where mutual disclosure builds trust and deepens relationships progressively. This technique leverages the psychological principle that shared vulnerability creates emotional bonds and perceived similarity. The key is matching the level of vulnerability rather than oversharing or undersharing relative to what others offer. If someone shares a minor frustration about work, respond with a similar level of personal disclosure, not with deeply personal trauma or superficial small talk. Appropriate vulnerability might include sharing relevant struggles, admitting mistakes, expressing uncertainties, or discussing personal growth challenges. The goal is authentic human connection, not strategic manipulation or inappropriate disclosure. Timing matters significantly. Early relationships require lighter levels of mutual disclosure, while deeper relationships can handle more significant vulnerability. Moving too fast toward deep disclosure can feel overwhelming, while staying to surface level prevents relationship development. Pay attention to how others respond to your vulnerability. Healthy relationships involve mutual acceptance and support for shared vulnerabilities. If someone responds to your appropriate vulnerability with judgment, dismissal, or exploitation, this provides important information about their character and the relationship's potential. The vulnerability loop creates psychological safety, where both parties feel accepted for their authentic selves rather than just their polished public presentations. This safety enables better communication, creative collaboration, and emotional support. Hack 89. The Similarity Emphasis Method. Actively look for and highlight genuine similarities between yourself and others to increase mutual liking and rapport. People naturally prefer those who share their characteristics, experiences, values, interests, or backgrounds because similarity suggests compatibility and reduces uncertainty about others' reliability and trustworthiness. Look for authentic common ground rather than manufacturing false connections. Shared experiences like similar educational backgrounds, travel destinations, career challenges, family situations, or personal interests create natural conversation topics and bonding opportunities. Values-based similarities often create stronger connections than surface-level similarities. Discovering that someone shares your commitment to family, learning, creativity, service, or personal growth typically matters more than superficial similarities like clothing preferences or entertainment choices. Express genuine interest when you discover similarities rather than just noting them and moving on. I studied there too. What did you think of Professor Johnson's class? Core, I'm also passionate about environmental conservation. What got you interested in that cause? Core, these follow-up questions deepen the similarity connection. The technique works partly through the mere exposure effect. People tend to like things and people they encounter frequently, or that feel familiar. Emphasizing similarities creates psychological familiarity that translates into increased comfort and liking. Be authentic in your similarity emphasis. People have sophisticated social radar for detecting fake attempts at connection, and insincere similarity claims often backfire by creating impressions of manipulation rather than genuine connection. Hack 90. The compliment timing optimization gives specific, sincere compliments about choices, efforts, and behaviors rather than unchangeable characteristics. I appreciate how thoughtfully you handled that difficult conversation. Works better than "you're so smart." Because effort-based compliments motivate continued good behavior, while trait-based compliments can create performance pressure. Effort-based compliments work through what psychologist Carol Dweck calls growth mindset reinforcement. When you praise someone's choices, strategies, or efforts, you're encouraging them to continue engaging in those controllable behaviors. When you praise inherent traits, you're suggesting that performance depends on fixed characteristics rather than changeable actions. Timing significantly affects compliment impact. Immediate feedback after positive behaviors is most effective for reinforcement. However, delayed compliments can also be powerful when they demonstrate that you remembered and valued someone's actions enough to bring them up later. Specificity makes compliments more meaningful and credible. Instead of "great job," try "I was impressed by how you stayed calm during that tense discussion and found a solution that worked for everyone." Specific compliments show that you are paying attention and can identify exactly what the person did well. Public compliments are often more impactful than private ones because they enhance the recipient's reputation and social standing. However, ensure that public praise feels appropriate for the relationship and situation, rather than embarrassing or excessive. The most effective compliments identify behaviors you'd like to see repeated. When you compliment someone's effective communication, creative problem solving, or thoughtful consideration of others, you're encouraging them to continue demonstrating those valuable qualities. Hack 91. The Benjamin Franklin Effect. Ask people to do small favors for you rather than just doing favors for them. Counterintuitively, people actually like you more after doing you a favor, because they need to justify their helpful action by believing you're worthy of their assistance and effort. This effect occurs because of cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that arises when actions and beliefs don't align. When someone helps you, especially if they don't know you well, they unconsciously ask themselves, "Why did I help this person?" The most comfortable answer is because they're likable and deserving of help. Choose requests that are genuinely small and easy to fulfill, asking for brief information, simple directions, recommendations, or minor assistance that requires minimal time or effort. The favor should feel helpful to you, but not burdensome to them. The technique is particularly effective in professional networking situations, where you want to build relationships but don't have established connections. Asking for brief advice, introductions to others, or recommendations for resources provides opportunities for others to demonstrate expertise while creating positive feelings toward you. Express genuine gratitude for any assistance you receive and follow up to let people know how their help proved valuable. This closes the loop and reinforces their positive feelings about helping you, while creating opportunities for continued relationship building. Be careful not to overuse this technique with the same people or to ask for favors that are actually significant impositions disguised as small requests. The goal is creating positive interaction patterns, not exploiting others' helpfulness. Hack 92. The Scarcity Principle Application. When presenting opportunities, ideas, or proposals, honestly mention genuine limitations, deadlines, or exclusive aspects that create natural scarcity. People value opportunities more highly when they appear limited or exclusive, because scarcity suggests both quality and the potential for loss if action isn't taken quickly. The key word is honestly. Artificial scarcity tactics often backfire when discovered and damage trust permanently. Only mention limitations that are genuinely real and relevant to the situation. If there's a real deadline, mention it. If opportunity is actually limited to certain people or time periods, explain why. Scarcity works through loss aversion. People are typically more motivated to avoid losing opportunities than to gain equivalent benefits. Only available until Friday creates urgency that available starting Monday doesn't generate, even if the opportunity value is identical. The technique is most effective when combined with genuine value rather than used as a standalone influence tactic. People need to want the opportunity first. Scarcity alone doesn't create desire for things people don't actually value. Different types of scarcity work in different situations. Time scarcity creates urgency for decisions. Quantity scarcity suggests high demand and quality. Exclusive access suggests special status and insider benefits. Choose scarcity types that align naturally with your specific situation. Avoid creating false urgency or artificial limitations, because these tactics damage credibility and relationships when discovered. Authentic scarcity provides helpful information that assists decision-making, while false scarcity manipulates through deception. Hack 93. The Authority Establishment Technique. Share your relevant credentials, experience, or expertise early in conversations where it matters. But do so naturally through storytelling or context rather than boastful declarations. People defer to authority figures and give more weight to information from credible sources. But perceived expertise must be established before advice or recommendations carry influence. Weave authority information into natural conversation flow instead of announcing, "I have 15 years of marketing experience." Tell relevant stories that demonstrate your expertise. When I was working on a similar campaign for a tech startup, we found that social media conversion rates improved dramatically when different types of authority work in different situations. Professional credentials matter for work-related topics. Personal experience carries weight for life advice. Educational background influences responses to complex or technical subjects. Choose authority indicators that are relevant to the current conversation and audience. The technique works because authority provides a mental shortcut for evaluating information credibility. When people perceive you as an expert, they don't need to critically evaluate every piece of information you provide. They can trust your expertise to filter and interpret information appropriately. Be careful not to overstate your authority or claim expertise you don't actually possess. False authority claims create credibility damage that's difficult to repair. Focus on areas where you genuinely have superior knowledge or experience. Combine authority establishment with intellectual humility by acknowledging the limits of your expertise and areas where others might have superior knowledge. This balanced approach builds credibility without seeming arrogant or close-minded. K94. The consistency commitment strategy. Get people to make small public commitments or written statements about their intentions, values, or positions. Once someone commits to a position, they become much more likely to follow through with actions that align with that commitment, because humans have powerful drives to maintain. Consistency between stated beliefs and actual behavior. The commitment should be voluntary rather than coerced, and should align with the person's existing values rather than contradicting them. People resist commitments that feel forced or inconsistent with their self-concept, but they embrace commitments that feel like natural expressions of their values and intentions. Written commitments tend to be more powerful than verbal ones, because the act of writing creates more conscious deliberation and creates physical evidence of the commitment that can be referenced later. Having people sign pledges, write goal statements, or document their intentions increases follow-through rates significantly. Public commitments are often more powerful than private ones because they add social accountability and reputation concerns to personal consistency motivation. However, the audience should be supportive rather than judgmental to avoid creating performance pressure that might backfire. The technique is particularly effective for encouraging behaviors that people already believe they should do but struggle to follow through on consistently. Most people want to exercise, eat well, save money, learn new skills, or help others. Commitment strategies help bridge the gap between intention and action. Frame commitments positively in terms of identity and values rather than negatively in terms of restrictions or limitations. I commit to prioritizing my health through regular exercise. Feels more empowering than I commit to stop being lazy about fitness. Hack 95. The contrast principle usage when presenting options or making proposals. Strategically order your presentation to take advantage of contrast effects that influence perception of value, reasonableness, and attractiveness. The order in which people encounter information significantly affects their judgments about subsequent information. In negotiation situations, present more extreme positions before your actual desired outcome to make your real position seem more reasonable by comparison. If you want a $5,000 budget increase, you might initially discuss what could be accomplished with a $10,000 increase before settling on your actual target. For sales or proposal situations, show premium options first to establish high reference points. Then present your recommended option, which appears more reasonable and valuable by comparison. This anchoring effect influences perception of fairness and value. The technique also works for personal decision-making. When evaluating options for yourself, consider extreme alternatives first to calibrate your judgment about moderate choices. This might involve researching luxury options before choosing mid-range alternatives, or considering very demanding schedules before settling on reasonable time commitments. Cultural factors influence contrast sensitivity. Some people and cultures are more susceptible to contrast effects than others. Pay attention to how different audiences respond to contrast presentations and adjust your approach accordingly. Use contrast ethically to provide helpful context rather than to manipulate through false comparisons. Legitimate contrast helps people understand the range of available options and make informed choices rather than deceiving them about relative value. Hack 96. The baseline behavior assessment. Before attempting to interpret someone's emotions, stress level, or intentions, spend time observing their normal behavior patterns under typical circumstances. People vary dramatically in their baseline energy levels, communication styles, facial expressions, and body language. So you can only detect meaningful changes when you understand what's normal for each individual. Some people naturally speak quickly, gesture extensively, and maintain high energy levels, while others are naturally quiet, reserved, and low-key, interpreting fast speech as anxiety or quiet behavior as sadness would be inaccurate if those are normal patterns for those individuals. Establish baselines through multiple observations across different situations when possible. How does this person behave during casual conversation during work meetings, when discussing topics they're passionate about, when they're tired or stressed? This baseline information provides crucial context for interpreting future behavior. Pay attention to changes from baseline rather than absolute behavior levels. A naturally energetic person becoming quiet might indicate fatigue, illness, or emotional distress, while the same quiet behavior from a naturally reserved person might indicate contentment and focus. The technique is particularly important for parents, teachers, managers, and anyone who needs to understand others' emotional states accurately. Misreading normal behavior as problematic or missing genuine distress signals can lead to inappropriate responses that damage relationships. Cultural baselines also matter. Communication styles, emotional expression, and social interaction patterns vary significantly across cultures. What seems normal in one cultural context might seem unusual in another, so consider cultural factors when establishing behavioral baselines. Hack 97. The cluster analysis method. Look for clusters of behavioral signals rather than making interpretations based on single indicators. One sign of nervousness, excitement, or deception could result from numerous causes, but multiple consistent signals provide more reliable information about someone's actual emotional or mental state. For example, nervousness might be indicated by several behaviors occurring together: fidgeting with objects, voice pitch changes, reduced eye contact, increased speech pace, and physical tension. Any one of these behaviors could have alternative explanations, but the combination suggests genuine nervous arousal. Pay attention to changes in multiple behavior channels simultaneously. Verbal content, vocal tone, facial expressions, body posture, and movement patterns all provide information that's more reliable when considered together than when analyzed separately. Consider the consistency and timing of behavioral clusters. Signals that appear together and persist over several minutes are more meaningful than isolated behaviors that appear briefly and inconsistently. The technique helps avoid overinterpretation of meaningless behavioral variations while increasing accuracy when genuine emotional or mental state changes are occurring. This skill is particularly valuable for parents, teachers, managers, therapists, and anyone who needs to understand others' internal states accurately. Practice cluster analysis by observing people in various situations and noting which behaviors tend to co-occur. Television shows, movies, and real-life observation all provide opportunities to develop pattern recognition skills that improve social understanding. Hack 98. The context consideration protocol. Always consider situational factors when interpreting others' behavior rather than immediately attributing actions to personality characteristics. Attribution theory demonstrates that people consistently overestimate personality factors and underestimate situational influences when explaining others' behavior, leading to inaccurate social judgments and inappropriate responses. Someone might seem unfriendly, not because they're naturally rude, but because they're dealing with personal stress, physical discomfort, time pressure, or family problems. A usually punctual person arriving late might be facing transportation issues rather than becoming careless about commitments. Ask yourself what situational factors might be influencing the behavior you're observing. Is this person typically like this, or might external circumstances be affecting their current behavior? Are there time pressures, social pressures, physical discomforts, or emotional stressors that could explain what you're seeing. This approach prevents the fundamental attribution error that damages relationships and leads to conflict escalation. When you assume negative behavior reflects bad character, you respond defensively or aggressively. When you consider situational explanations, you respond with understanding and problem solving. The technique is particularly important during conflict situations, where accurate understanding of others' motivations affects your response strategy. Misattributing situational stress to personal hostility often escalates conflicts unnecessarily. Practice giving people the benefit of the doubt by default, especially when their behavior seems uncharacteristic, or when you don't have complete information about their circumstances. This generous interpretation often leads to better relationships and more accurate understanding of complex social situations. Hack 99. The cultural awareness filter. Remember that communication styles, body language interpretations, social norms, and interaction patterns vary significantly across cultures, regions, and generational groups. What seems rude, aggressive, or inappropriate in one cultural context might be completely normal and acceptable in another. Direct eye contact is considered respectful and trustworthy in many Western cultures, but can be seen as aggressive or disrespectful in other cultural contexts. Personal space preferences, touching behaviors, voice volume, and conversation pacing all vary dramatically across cultural backgrounds. Before making judgments about someone's intentions or character based on their communication style, consider whether cultural differences might explain what you're observing. This is particularly important in diverse workplaces, educational settings, and social environments where people from many backgrounds interact regularly. The filter applies to generational differences as well as ethnic and national cultures. Different generations have different norms around technology use, communication, formality, work-life balance, and social interaction patterns that can create misunderstandings when not recognized. Ask clarifying questions when you're uncertain about communication intentions rather than making assumptions based on your own cultural reference frame. Could you help me understand what you meant by that? Often reveals that apparent rudeness was actually directness valued in the speaker's culture. The technique helps prevent cultural misunderstandings that can damage relationships, create workplace conflicts, or lead to missed opportunities for genuine connection across cultural differences. Hack 100. The emotional contagion awareness. Recognize that emotions are genuinely contagious. You automatically and unconsciously mirror the emotional states of people around you through facial mimicry, posture, copying, and neural mirroring systems. Understanding this phenomenon allows you to both protect yourself from negative emotional environments and positively influence others through your own. Emotional state management. Emotional contagion occurs through multiple channels. When you see someone smile, your facial muscles unconsciously create micro-expressions of smiling that trigger positive emotions in your own brain. When someone speaks with anxiety, your nervous system begins matching their arousal level. When people around you are calm and confident, you naturally become calmer and more confident yourself. Use this knowledge protectively by limiting exposure to consistently negative emotional environments when possible. Chronic exposure to anxiety, anger, or depression from others can significantly impact your own emotional well-being and mental health over time. Leverage emotional contagion positively by consciously modeling the emotional states you want to encourage in others. If you want meetings to be more productive, arrive with focused, energetic enthusiasm. If you want family interactions to be more harmonious, maintain calm, positive emotional tone even when others are agitated. The technique is particularly powerful for parents, teachers, managers, and anyone in leadership positions because your emotional state significantly influences the emotional climate for people around you. Children especially are highly susceptible to emotional contagion from their primary caregivers. Practice emotional awareness and regulation skills so you can maintain positive emotional states even when surrounded by negative emotions. This might involve meditation, exercise, social support, or other emotional management strategies that help you stay centered regardless of external emotional influences.